You want answers? I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth! You can't handle the truth!
Everyone, and welcome to another episode of Truth, Justice, and the New England Pro Wrestling Way. I am your host, former Caddick Wrestling Triple Crown champion Julian Starr, but unfortunately I am not joined by my fellow host. My fellow host, Tarzan Taylor, aka Matt Spectro, is in Disney World, having a grand old time with his family. However, I did not come alone, ladies and gentlemen. You see, Matt Spectro used to be part of a band, and this band comes with more than one member. And that member is none other than a former NECW Tag Team Champion, a former WFA Tag Team Champion, and a former All-Star Wrestling Heavyweight Champion. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome my host for this episode today, Mark Vincent.
Thanks. That was quite the introduction. Made me sound like a much more accomplished wrestler than it actually was. But yeah, I was the tag team partner of your host, fellow host, Matt Spectro. And of course, we were Shoot Brothers as well. But yeah, we were the Noise Boys for most of that time and spent the latter half of my 5.5, 6 year career.
And so you guys, I'm pretty sure I've shared this with you before, but when I was 14 years old, I used to go to WFA and I used to watch you and your brother against teams like the Nightbreed and the Metro Men and so on and so forth. So
yeah, actually, that's weird to me because weren't you at like a Littleton show?
No, I never actually did Littleton.
Oh, right, because you were in like Haverhill.
Yeah, so I only would do the Lawrence shows. So just give us a little synopsis so everyone who's listening in real quick kind of knows your background. I mean, you did explain that you were a tag team champ. You did tag with your brother, Matt Spectro, for a long time. Who did you train with?
Yeah, so I imagine that there's maybe a dozen people listening to this who don't even know who I am. But yeah, I trained in 99 with Jeff Costa, Lobster Man out of Nashua. Although most of the hands-on training was done by Rip Morrison and Maverick Wild. And yeah, I worked there, WFA, Green Mountain Wrestling, NECW, and it was a singles for the first couple of years, and then me and Matt were a team, which eventually morphed into the Noise Boys.
Nice. And so, did you enjoy tagging with your brother Matt Spectro?
Yeah, for the most part. I mean, it's funny because I'm older, but he's more experienced. But I was also the more rational of the team, you know. Like, as anyone knows, Tarzan, he had a tendency to blow up a lot. So
no way.
Yeah. So often I would be the rational people that people would take aside, you know, and talk to.
All right, so stuff. Ladies and gentlemen, my guest.
But wait,
host,
you did the intro all wrong, by the way.
Oh, what do you mean?
Because it's supposed to go like this. I'm supposed to intro. I'm Mark Vincent, the host of the show. And now let me introduce my co-host.
Oh, yeah.
He's a former ECW Tag Team Champion and the man who's retired from poker more times than Terry Funk retired from wrestling, Julian Starr.
That was a hell of an entrance. Could we hire you just to do our entrances?
I actually had to dig deep. I had to look this up because I wanted to find a championship that Tarzan hasn't introed you as.
And you know why? Because Tarzan typically will ask me what my championships are, and my entire career is a blur. So I don't remember any of it.
Yeah, I looked you up online and teamed with Ryan Rush and a former ECWA Tag Team Champion.
Yeah, I went ECWA like twice, maybe 3 times, and then they wouldn't pay me more than $50. So I was like, fuck that shit.
Yeah, because that's we were driving like
7 hours.
Delaware or something like that. Yeah.
All right, so let's get back on track here. Ladies and gentlemen, as you know, my fellow host today, Mark Vincent, is well-versed in the world of professional wrestling. Now, since you're sticking to format, Mark, I hear you have something for me.
Before we get that, you should tell the listeners what this show is all about.
That would be good.
Well, this podcast is about trying to get the truth. People in professional wrestling tend to be a bit too political, a bit too friendly. Well, Truth, Justice, and the New England Pro Wrestling Way is looking to break that mold as Tarzan and I sit down with various guests discussing multiple topics, but trying to gain the point of the truth. We will dig, we will probe, no matter how uncomfortable it may become. We will be sure to deliver truth, justice, and the New England Pro Wrestling way.
Okay, yes. So every week, the trivia question.
Yeah, my fave.
Now, I wanted to find a trivia question that I was around for.
Yep.
And one that you would still have a shot at guessing because obviously you weren't in wrestling from 99 to 2005 when I was. So the show was NECW, Good Times Emporium, the old Good Times building in Somerville, Massachusetts. Couldn't find the exact date, but it was like early 2002. All right, so the match, which is actually the match I first recorded concussion, the only concussion I know about in wrestling. So it was me and Matt versus Gimmick brother team, the Springgates. And it was a rematch, a street fight. Don't worry, you will have a shot at guessing this.
Okay.
Anyway, it was a street fight, and me and Matt are both 6'4", and these guys were, not that big. They're the heels. So the booker told them they need to really lay it in to these guys, to Matt and Mark, because they're big guys. They can take it. You got to make it look real. So one of the Springgates dead on kicked me straight in the face. Unprotected kick right to the nose, and I had a concussion. But anyway, the trivia part of this is, who is the booker of NECW at this time to give them this sage advice?
Oh.
And you do know this person, so at least you have a shot at guessing this.
Okay, all right. So I feel like Mark Vincent has now given me literally every leg up on this one. The booker at the time. All right, so all right, I'm gonna go with Bob Evans.
Oh
No,
that is a reasonable guess because he did book later on for NECW.
Yeah,
and we were still there as a team at that point. But of course, we will give our guest a shot at guessing this as well. So
yes, and with that comes the introduction of our guest. And our guest for this episode 18, ladies and gentlemen. We are riding into the sunset and being a successful podcast, but our guest for this episode, as stated on Facebook, which you can find on Truth, Justice, and the New England Pro Wrestling Way, this man is a veteran of the game. He has been around for quite some time, and he has done it all. This man claims to have held every championship in New England, and he has now been recently named the new permanent host of the WPAN, that is the wrestling podcast about nothing. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome my guest today, a member of Chunky But Funky, Sonny Goodspeed.
Thank you, gentlemen, for having me. It's an honor to be one of the 13 hosts of the WPAN. So even though I'm number 13, I'm a host. So.
I feel like at some point you guys are going to have like a news anchor, and he'll have a weather guy.
Absolutely, a green screen.
Yeah.
For our non-existent television.
Well, he has a YouTube.
Oh, that's true. Listen, one thing you forgot to mention about Mark Vincent over here, you didn't bring up, and I'm very disappointed.
Okay.
You didn't even ask him what his first gimmick was.
Oh, yeah. What was your first gimmick, Mark?
So anyone that knows Jeff Costa, the Lobster Man, was big on. He was pretty old school. He was big on old school gimmicks. Every promotion needed to have a cowboy, an Indian. I don't remember what
Pollock,
a gay gimmick.
Yeah.
And yes, my first gimmick was Mark Strongbow. Sometimes Chief Mark Strongbow.
Mark Strongbow.
Please tell me you had a headdress.
I did briefly. Oh my God, and that reminds me, when this is before I had my first match, I think I had done Battle Royal, and so Maverick took me aside in another room to teach me how to be an Indian, like how to no sell and have to do the little war dance, and fire back with chops. Oh my God, yes. I was hoping that wouldn't come up. Thanks.
Oh,
Sonny.
no. How is it not coming up?
This is a fantastic gift. I could never picture that before, and now that is going to be stuck with me for the rest of my life. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Tremendous.
So episode 18, ladies and gentlemen, is going to be all about comparing wrestling then to now in New England.
But before we get to that, we got to give Sonny a chance at answering that trivia question.
That is true. That is true. You got to give Sonny the chance. So go ahead and fire, sir.
Go ahead with the question again.
Okay, so yes, it was early 2002 NECW show, the Old Good Times Emporium. It was myself and my brother Matt against the Springgates, and it was a street fight, and the booker told them that these guys are really big, this is a street fight, they can take it, so you need to really lay in your shots. And yes, one of them kicked me dead on in the face, giving me a concussion. Who was the booker that gave them this sage advice?
What, was it me?
Ding, 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 ding.
Oh my God!
Listen,
It was in fact Sonny Goodspeed.
I love how like embarrassed you were. Is it me?
Is it me? So here's the thing with this, right? Yeah, I mean, independent wrestling. This isn't TV. Those people are right on top of you. You need to make it look real.
Yeah.
So and plus, those Springgates, they were small guys compared to you.
True.
Nobody's going to believe that they're actually going to hurt you unless they actually hurt you.
Well, they took that advice to heart.
Yeah, well, plus they were both terrible. So Zachary Springate, actually, I remember getting the opportunity. I had to let him go. I fired him. It was one of the best days of my life. And he said, I wish I kept the email because he sent me back an email that must have been 5 paragraphs long about how much he had done. He'd worked. He named every promotion. That's how you know you're a mark.
Good
He
Lord.
named every promotion he'd worked for, and I've been on top at all these promotions. I was like, you're doing a fake English gimmick, and we have Doug Williams, who's actually English, and he's a way better worker than you. Don't need you. The heave-ho, you got to go.
Talent in New England has never changed, apparently. So we're going to go ahead and compare wrestling between then and now, and we're going to see what has changed as far as work ethic, the way you get booked, the way you should approach things, gear. I have fan questions for you, Sonny. We're going to hit into all of it in just a little bit, but first I want to get a little picture on you. So I'm not sure if you've actually done just an interview about you or if you've done kind of like your background anywhere else. So basically what we want to know is the first question we ask all of our guests is what was the first thing that you saw in professional wrestling? What was the first thing that captured your eye and said, this is for me?
So the first thing I remember seeing that made me just like, I don't think I blinked for the longest time, was I saw Blackjack Mulligan putting a claw on somebody, and then a big red X came through the screen. Mark, no, you're closer to my age. Do you remember when they did those kind of things?
Yeah.
It was. Sure. I don't know what the hell this guy's doing to this guy, but whatever it is, it's censored. And then I just did everything I could to find whatever I didn't even know what it was that I was watching. I just remember seeing this giant man with a big black mustache and a black glove. And when he telegraphed, he showed everybody that his hand. I was like, what is he doing? And then he squeezed that dude's head, and then a big red X came up. I was hooked. I was so hooked. I didn't even know what was going on behind it. I'm assuming, obviously now, looking back at it, obviously he was bleeding. And that was it for me.
And at what around what time did this kind of capture you?
I think I was around 7.
Oh, really?
So yeah, it was that second grade.
Okay.
Yeah, second grade.
Now, obviously, as time go on, you're a longtime fan and whatnot, and obviously wrestling's progressing from then to now. Yeah. So when did you actually start training, and where did you start training?
So my best friend and I, Dave, you guys might know him as DJ Barron, been best friends for 40 years, so when I was 7 years old. So I found Dave around the same time I found wrestling, and Dave was also a wrestling fan. And I remember we connected on that because we'd share magazines and whatever else. And so as years went on, we kept talking about how we're going to be wrestlers, we're going to be a tag team. We were poor kids from Nashua on the tree streets, you know what I mean? No idea how to do this. And then, as you get older, you hear about like the Hart Brothers School in Vancouver. I remember calling out there one time and sitting at Dave's house, and we called out to Vancouver, and I go, this is going to be an expensive bill, but let's use your phone, Dave, instead of mine. And so a house phone, by the way. We called out there, and I think we talked to Bruce, and he's like, yeah, it's $3,000. Get yourself out here. You got to get yourself a place to live, and you got to get a job so you can afford it. I'm like, you might as well have told me $80 billion because $3,000 was the same. You know what I mean? And then how do you get to Vancouver? Can I drive there? What do I do? Literally no idea. No. So I was like, well, maybe we don't. And then Killer Kowalski, I remember being 15 or 16 years old, sending a letter to Killer Kowalski and getting a reply back, when you're 18, give me a call. And then when I was 19, I actually moved to Minnesota, and I actually ended up being right down the road from Ed Sharkey, who had trained everybody in Minnesota at that time, Jerry Lynn and the 1-2-3 Kid, or the Lightning Kid. And they used to run bar shows right up the street from us. So I went a couple times. And then on the end of this TV show they used to have, they had a where send your letters to Ed Sharkey, care of, and it was like this hotel up the road. So I remember getting on my pedal bike, and I drove up there, and I went to the front desk and asked for Ed Sharkey, and he's like, "No, you just got a P.O. box here. That's it." I was like, "Shit." So came back, and then Dave and I were at the Boston Garden one time watching a wrestling show, and some kid was passing out flyers saying, "Hey, you want to be a pro wrestler?" And the address was in Nashua. We were like. So we found the kid that was passing out the flyers. He brought us over to introduce us to Jeff, and that was it. He literally was up the street from our house. Jeff had just moved back from Vancouver, where he had a career, and wanted to start training guys. But his idea is that he wanted to do a mixed combination of shoot and working. And he had gathered a bunch of guys, and I smoked everybody. So at the end of the first day, he's like, "Oh, Jesus." He goes, "All right, who wants to do the shoot fighting and who wants to do the fake wrestling, the working?" And everybody raised their hand for the working. And I was like, "I'll do whatever." And I wasn't talented. I was just a young, big, freaking dumb as an ox, strong kid. So I was just, and I was actually quick and I was athletic. So I was able to just take these guys down and ride them and do whatever. So he's like, "Well, it's not going to be that entertaining if you just go out there and just shit kick everybody. So we're going to have to learn how to work." And that was
what
it.
Time period was this? Because the earliest mention I could find of you online was like 96.
Oh.
Which it probably was a couple years before this then?
Yeah. So this was 92.
92.
So I actually started training. And I say this a lot too. Like, I had the advantage of, before we even took a bump or stepped foot in a ring, I would go over to Jeff's house, Dave and I, and we would watch wrestling. And he would tell us, "Well, this is why they're doing this, and this is it." So I had the psychology part of it before ever touching anybody. You know what I mean? Like learning why things were done and how they were done way before taking a bump. It was definitely an advantage versus, "All right, kid, here's your first day, get in the ring." You know what I mean? Learn how to do the stuff, and then we'll tell you why you're doing the stuff. I did mine almost opposite. So I had almost 2 years before I had my first show of just learning why. It was definitely different than even your training with Jeff, in 99. So
now,
cool.
When you walked into the school, I'm going to go on the assumption it's the same place that Brian Fury had taken me once, which was, I think it was an upstairs building. So it was the same place, right?
No, your assumption would be wrong. This was in his backyard on literally frozen lawn furniture.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he didn't have a ring. It was just coming into thaw, so he had lawn furniture, like the cushions, just on the ground, but literally frozen into the ground. And he's like, he would kick away like dirt, and he'd be like, "All right, just throw yourself down." Huh? Just tuck your chin and throw yourself down. So I was like, "Well, all right." So we were talking about this at the school the other night,
Yeah.
right? And if you did it right, he'd say, "Do it again. Make sure it wasn't a mistake." Because Jeff was great at saying, "Here's how you do it. I can't show you how to do it. I'm not going to take a bump, but this is how you do it." Because we were working on, like, we were talking about drop kicks, And Jeff would be like, "All right, throw a drop kick." I'm like, "Well, how do you throw a drop kick?" "Don't you know how to work? Just throw your fucking feet in the air." I was like, "All right." So that's literally how I learned everything once we started.
Okay, so obviously you would have seen on TV or whatever that professional wrestling's done in a ring. So when you went and signed to train with Lobster Man and he brings you to his backyard and goes, "All right, start falling on my mattress," or whatever it is.
Yeah.
What was your first, what were the thoughts running through your head?
This is fucking awesome. Like, literally, I was like, because I knew I didn't have the money to go to Kowalski's. I knew I didn't have the money to get to Vancouver. And at the time, really, those were it. Like, those are the only two schools. This is 91, 92. That was it, right? So I knew eventually, he's like, "Well, eventually we'll get to there. And then I just remember where Home Depot backed up into his yard one time, and literally it was all wood. He built a ring out of just wood. Put it all together. We were so fucking excited. He hit the ropes the first time, snapped a 4x4 post. We were like, "Well,
Oh God!
guess we can't do that. So 4x4 post. That's a pretty big piece of lumber. Snapped it in half, hitting the ropes the first time. So then we went to a fence company that was up the road from us, and I remember him asking me, he's like, "Yeah, I need some fence post." He's like, "But not that new shit." He goes, "Don't you have any stuff you dug out of the ground we can just cut down to size?" And the guy's like, "Yeah, we have some scrap stuff." One of the poles was filled with concrete. That thing must have weighed 100 pounds at least, and I was always the one carrying that thing. Like, the posts are heavy enough. Now fill it with freaking concrete. Just one post, though, out of the 4, just filled with concrete. Then he didn't want to buy turnbuckles for all the way around, so essentially you would need 3 times 4 was 12 turnbuckles, right? No, he gets 6 turnbuckles, and then the other side were chains. So if you hit the side with the chains, it sucked. It sucked so bad. Like, it was just so terrible. But it was awesome. That's all I ever knew. So, like, when I actually got into a decent ring that had like a good bump and shit, I was like, what is this witchery? Like, what is this? It was so different.
So wrestling didn't seem so bad once you started training in an actual ring.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Once you take a bump in an actual ring, you're like, oh, damn. Like, this is, wow, that's what it's supposed to be like. Yeah. It was crazy.
So at what point during your training and then transitioning to shows, how long did you train before you had your first match?
So, like I said, all the video watching and all that stuff was probably about a year. And then we started doing the training 93 and had our first match in 94. So it was almost like 2 full years of training, a year and a half maybe, but probably 6 months of actual physical training, and then let's have a show.
And then was this show elsewhere, or was it a Lobsterman show?
It was a Lobsterman show. It was in Hudson, New Hampshire, in a building called Richard's Catering Hall. It was literally just a catering hall, and we had the short boy ring. All the boys changed in the kitchen. So that was probably super sanitary. That's what you want. Sweaty, fat guys with loose pubic hair floating around a kitchen. It was,
in your lops rolls.
Yeah, exactly. Just try the soup. Push the fish. It's turning.
What was one of the first gimmicks that Lobsterman assigned you during said show?
Oh, so originally I was going to be Tank.
Okay.
I was going to wear camouflage. I was going to be Tank because I was a thick guy. I was going to be Tank. And then it came in the old school, and we always need somebody to fight for the red, white, and blue. We're going to get you a mask. You're going to be Captain USA. So that's what I was. I was Captain USA. I was a fat guy wearing blue spandex with a poorly put together mask, and that I couldn't see or breathe out of.
I did read that online that you were Captain USA.
Yeah.
I was like, is that right? Because I remember
Danny
being Captain USA once I started.
I retired the gimmick, and he took it over. Yeah, so I was Captain USA for a while. It was something.
That reminds me, is this true that at one point you were Orlin Goodspeed III?
That's right. That's right. That's my shoot name, Orlin Eugene Goodspeed III.
And at what point did you change your name, and why? Because that name sounds amazing.
Yeah, so that was years later. That was actually closer to the end of my career. So I went from Captain USA, and I remember I was wrestling Gary Gold. And do you guys remember Gary Gold, the Nature Boy?
I know
Julia
the name.
doesn't.
I've heard the name.
All right. Yeah, he was like a Taunton guy, that area. He did a lot. Like, he was a Kowalski guy, and then he did a lot of refereeing for like the NWA in Florida and stuff like that. But I was wrestling him, and I remember I was going to turn heel from Captain USA, and then I was going to be Crusher Hughes. I was going to be Butcher Hughes' younger brother. The problem being is that all our shows were in Hudson, New Hampshire. It's essentially where I grew up. Everybody that was coming to these shows knew me as I was Sonny Goodspeed. So I remember I took off the mask, and I was beating the shit out of Gary. Turned heel. I worked maybe 1 or 2 shows as Crusher Hughes, and then I went to Crusher Goodspeed. And then I did that for a while. Then it was just Sonny Goodspeed or Sonny Crusher Goodspeed. Then I did that for a long time, and then I went to so then I went out 2008, I think it was, is when I came back as 2009 is when I came back as I wanted to come back as a heel. I was thinner. I had the lap band surgery. I lost a ton of weight. I was probably at that time 270, 280 versus the 430 that I was before. And I teamed with Doc Heresy, Joey Eastman as our manager, and we were called Intervention. So he was Dr. Reginald Heresy. I was Orlin Goodspeed III, and we were Intervention. So, with our manager, Joseph Eastman. It was a good time. It was a good time.
Sounds amazing.
Yeah.
So, at what point after all this, goes on and whatnot? So, did you ever break away from Lobsterman? I mean, was there like a falling out? Did you ever have any issues with Lobsterman?
Oh, I had all the issues with Lobsterman.
I was going to say there was probably multiple falling outs, knowing how things went down there at times.
It was so bizarre because I was his right hand guy. I used to come home, date night with my wife or whatever, or just whatever, and I'd have 11 messages on my phone mail, phone mail on my answer machine, and this would be like one of the messages. Kid, remember this? A Willie from the woods, and then that was it. Right? I'm like, what the hell? And then another one would be, hey, blood sucking alien. Remind me to tell you about that. What? So then I'd call him and I'd be like, hey, what's Willie from the woods? He'd be like, what? The fuck is Willie from the woods? I'm like, I don't know. You left it on my voicemail. I have no idea what that is. I wouldn't remember.
Although the blood-sucking alien did eventually
actually happen. And Willie from the Woods, he ended up remembering it was going to be Wolfman. But essentially what happened is I stopped being a yes man. Jeff trained me one way, right? And I took what he said as gospel. Well, then as time went on and the shows went on, he stopped following his own things that he taught me. And I would get aggravated. So he'd be like, we're going to do this. I'm like, that sucks. He'd be like, well, fuck you. And I'd be like, well, fuck you. And then the last straw, I remember I was up at the school above that building there behind the chicken and chips, and I was in the ring with a kid, and I was just helping him train through. I wasn't like a trainer, but I would help because nobody else was, so I would help. And then I remember doing something, and he goes, all right, get out, Sonny. And he comes in and jumps in the ring and does something completely different. Like just what I was teaching just obviously just wasn't valid, and he just did something completely different. I sat there, I just took off my boots, and I'm like, all right, I'm out of here. So he says, let's go have a talk. So we walked downstairs. I had my gear bag with me. We're sitting up front, and we're face to face, and he goes, I think maybe it's time we take a break from each other. I go, I couldn't agree more. And he goes, let's finish out your last couple of bookings, and then we'll come down the road again together. I go, perfect. So the next couple of bookings were on where now Fisher Cat Stadium is. There were outdoor shows. I forget what that park was called, but whatever it was. So we did a couple of shows there. And I remember I did the first show. We were in a field house. And I remember I was working with, I did a battle royal. And do you remember a kid named, I don't know if you were around there, but AJ Star or something like that?
No, I was around then. Yes.
You were?
Yep.
Kid's a piece of shit. So I remember I gave him some boots to wear and trying to help the kid out. And I was like, hey, listen, let's work together and I'll let you throw me out of the battle royal. At the time I was probably turning 60 pounds and I'm a big dude. This kid looks like a sixth grader, right?
Okay.
I go, so I'll let you toss me out, because they were going to run with him as the baby face. And I just remember him tossing me out and I come to the back and he comes walking through after he won the battle royal, and I stood up to just say, hey, thanks, and he just kayfabed me and walked by and big leagued me, and I was like, all right. And he went right over to Danny Patiglio, and I just remember overhearing some stuff, and Danny was maybe shit talking me a little bit, and it was just weird. It instead of just ending it amicably, like a breakup, you know what I mean, like adults, they just decided to bury me and shit talk me, and I was like, whatever. So I didn't even show up for the next show. I was like, I'm fucking done. Because at the time I was getting booked elsewhere anyway, and I didn't need his booking because it sounded it was almost like I'd go there just to get ridiculed and just I remember one point at one of the shows he had me run out and steal all the belts. I would schmoz whoever it was and I would steal the belt. And then I go, Jeff, where is this going? He's like, oh, you'll see. And I'm like, all right. Well, the next show, all the belts are back on the regular guys and nothing said about it. Well, then I talked to Bob and he goes, I talked to him about it. And he goes, well, if he's such a fucking mark for the belts, let's give him all the belts. And I go, when the fuck have I ever been a mark for the belt? What? It makes no sense to me. I just wanted to have good matches and work and make things make sense. And just what they were doing at the time just didn't make fucking sense. And I was like, literally, I sat there multiple times booking a show. He would have a pen and a piece of paper staring at the door and be like, all right, let's see who comes in. He'd like, oh, Maverick Wild. Who's next? Oh, Mark Vincent or Mark Strongbow. And that would be a match on the card. Because he only put together the main event, and then everything else was just however it showed up. And I would get so frustrated. There was no direction. We were running the same building every month without stories.
And Jeff had such an incredibly short attention span, that
yes.
From show to show, you never knew
what you were doing. You'd be a babyface three shows in a row, and then all of a sudden you're in a heel faction that never formed, it became very frustrating. So I said, I'm just going to take my bookings elsewhere. I wasn't looking for story. I just wanted to work. I wanted to work different guys. I wanted to work as much as I could and just have good matches. And so I just started taking bookings elsewhere, and I never came back. I went to go see his shows a couple of times, and I was, it was what it was, and I was cordial to him until literally got to the point where I remember I was taking my daughter to the mall. The mall in Fezziline Mall, Nashua. And we were walking in towards the food court because that's where we parked, and he was walking out of the food court with his daughter, and we didn't even say hello to each other. We could have bumped shoulders, and we just ignored each other like we'd never met. And I really haven't seen him since. I haven't really talked to him since. I have no ill will towards him. I don't have any hard feelings towards him because without him, I wouldn't be, New England Pro Wrestling Hall of Famer. I don't know if you knew that, Mark. But and once, I don't know if you guys were aware of this, but I was a booker once too.
Oh,
yeah. Not just Tarzan, I was too, but not for.
Tarzan was a booker, I hear.
Yeah,
that's what I heard. I mean, that's what I read on his T-shirt. But, yeah. But yeah, so I'm super grateful for him. And again, like as you grow older, and I think you'll probably attest to this, and you as well, even though you're not older, you soften a little bit, right? Like I've heard you talk about like who do you hate in this, and you say you hate's a strong word, but because you soften. Like when you're a 25-year-old kid, a 26-year-old kid, you're like, fuck him, I wouldn't piss on him if he was on fire. But now you're like, well, I'm an adult, I have kids and a mortgage to take care of, like I have no time for hate in my life. But I'm just indifferent towards him, I'm grateful for everything he did. I just don't have any kind of relationship with him now, and it's sad. I think it's kind of sad.
Just to chime in, it's funny you said that because I do remember situations from like 20 years ago where I was outraged about something in wrestling, and now or even like 5 years later, I look back at it like whatever,
Yeah.
I just can't believe how worked up I was about it, but not like Tarzan level worked up, but
Nobody gets Tarzan level worked up.
I relate the same way as you just said. I know I'm only 30, but even like 10 years ago, like if something pissed me off, I was like, fuck that guy, fuck this guy, and then I would hold on to it. And there's like a point in your life, and I think it's different for everyone, but there's a point in your life where like you're just like, this is taking too much energy to hate or
give that much thought towards.
Yeah.
But if you know Julian, he's like a 50-year-old and a 30-year-old body.
I was going to say.
Is. Yeah, I'm learning this a lot because I always knew of Julian, but now I'm spending more time with him at the school and stuff, so I'm learning a lot about this, but you learn that quickly with Julian. He's an old soul. As they say.
Yeah, I was going to say my number's 30, but mentally I feel like I'm 50 or 60.
Yeah.
Like I just,
and I do think it's the business too that like it changes you quick. Like it made me super hard and angry for a lot of years at independent wrestling. I was and I'm not an angry guy, but this business just made me like just miserable. At one point, I thought everything was a fucking work, everything, because that's what you're around all the time.
That's
people
what you're
trying to work
programmed to
you, right? That's what people are trying to work you for everything. Like, you don't know anymore. The lines get blurred. I couldn't imagine if this was something I did for an actual living. Like I didn't have to have another job. If this is all I did, I don't know that I would have made it like through all that. I can't say I'd be in jail or dead. I think like
I would compare professional wrestling once you're in the business and you learn it. Once you're a worker and stuff, it's almost like when Neo is unplugged from the Matrix and then he plugs back in. He's like, I don't know what's real or fake anymore.
Right.
And like that's how you feel being in the business. 9 times out of 10, you're like, that's a work.
Yeah.
And even when something gets pushed as no, it's a shoot, you're like, nah, it's a work.
Nah.
And
Right. You feel like you could see through everything. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, 6 years, right? I'm sure you had some kind of like that went through your process, right? You went through that. And it's, again, just on this level, through working 3 times a month. And that's the vibe we get. That's where we're fed, and that's how we feel. I couldn't imagine doing this when the guys were doing it 7 days a week, twice on Sundays. Like everything. Like just you look at everything. Fucking gas, 78 cents a gallon. That's a fucking work. You know what I mean? Like just completely different times. It's just so bizarre. But
So before I had started training with the Chaotic Training Center, which is now the New England Pro Wrestling Academy, I had heard about Chunky but Funky. But the first person I met was Scott Ashworth.
Sweet Scott.
Sweet Scott Ashworth.
Scott.
And so I was working, I think it was like a RWA or something. It was some sort of show in Rhode Island. And I wasn't trained yet, but I was working there, and I had met him, and everyone talked about him. And the big issue was this guy drinks a ton of beer before he goes out there.
And after?
yeah.
But the big thing was it was Chunky but Funky. And so I had later down the road learned that you were the other half of it.
Yeah.
But what you told me, and correct me if I'm wrong, is your childhood friend, DJ Barron, was one of the original members of Chunky but Funky.
Yes.
Did you form Chunky but Funky after you broke away from Jeff Costa?
Yes, actually, Bob Evans is to blame for that one. Like so,
The blame. I like
the
it.
blame. Not the blame, but that was the gift. That was Bob Evans' gift to us. So Scott and I and Dave DJ were guys that brought in. He would bring in like guys like Johnny Idol. We could still go and have matches, but then he was bringing in kids like Andre Lyons and Minnie and he had a team called, I don't even know who they were, Zach Frost and somebody else. But I don't know, a couple of young kids, you know what I mean? Like the
Young up-and-comers.
Yeah, Pride. You know, they were bringing in different guys, like younger guys. So he needed guys that had been around a little bit to work with these kids. Bob was doing it right even back then. I don't even know if he knew what he was doing, but he was doing it right. Like we're having the older guys work with the younger kids and teaching them, you know, the way, right? Young Daniel's son. And I remember it was an outdoor show, 4th of July weekend somewhere. And he goes, I have you teaming with Scott. I go, all right. And then we were all just kind of, I was still wearing my black and blue gear. Scott's always been black and pink. And I just remember we went out and Scott and I clicked like immediately. Like, because it was two, like we came up the same time, the same way together. Just, I was New Hampshire, he was South Shore, you know, and our paths never crossed until that time. We were in the locker room together. We would chat, you know, a couple of old timers, whatever. But when he put us together, man, it was like we'd been together forever. Like it was just that good. And that, I was like, man, that was fun. And Bob just kind of said it jokingly. He's like, look, you guys are like Chunky but Funky. And then we were like, yep, that's what we are. And then it just became that. And then shortly after, like Scott had another booking because at the time he was doing a lot of Doink. And he would get booked as Doink everywhere. So I was like, well, let's bring DJ in. Let's bring Dave in, you know, because Dave was a lot bigger at the time. And I go, let's have him be the third member. I said, we can get through a match just as easy with Dave as I can with me and Scott or Scott and Dave. And it just became like the perfect trio. Dave at the time was getting ready for a singles run. He had just come off working as Moondog Baron for like top rope and stuff. And he was ordering new gear, and I go, hey, I called him. I go, hey, is it not too late to change some of your stuff in your gear? He goes, no, I don't think so. I said, call him, tell him to add some pink. He goes, what? I go, yeah, man, you're going to be Chunky but Funky with us. He's like, oh, all right. So he called the lady, said, hey, throw some pink on there. So she threw some pink. So we were just interchangeable as 3 members of Chunky but Funky. And the most fun time I've ever had. I don't know how many years it even ran. I couldn't tell you when our first match. Oh, I knew when our first match was. Couldn't tell you when our last match was. And it just rolled. I remember Bob, like kind of just jokingly ribbing us. He throws out there Chunky but Funky, and it was all about fat. Like he'd have pizza rolling across the screen, like on our Tron thing, you know, and just doing that kind of shit. But my God, was that freaking fun. I probably would have quit long before that or shortly after that if that didn't come up.
That was actually one of my first introductions to like more or less independent wrestling, but like someone working. You know what I mean? And at the time, like, because I was untrained, I didn't know that was considered working.
Yeah.
But, like, I remember, was I in a match or I saw him in a match or whatever, but he's just doing a move and then dancing and then doing a move and the crowd's just popping. And I was entertained because I was like, wow, he's hilarious, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
And, like, little did I know that, like, I'm literally watching a guy work. He's doing stuff that can entertain a crowd that doesn't require being athletic, more or less.
It was crazy.
Mark Vincent, did you and your brother, Matt Spectro, as the Noise Boys, work Chunky But Funky ever?
No, unfortunately. I did know Sweet Scott because I remember working those, Top Rope or Yankee Pro shows, and he was just one of those true characters of wrestling where, I don't know if listeners can picture this, but he'd have a beer in his left hand and a cigarette between the two fingers of his left hand at the same time.
Wearing a Speedo or a thong?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, constantly. That's how Scott... And Scott was not in shape. You know, Scott looked like somebody's dad.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But he would be walking around with the beer can, the cigarette, and then a black thong, barefoot, just walking around with his ass hanging out. Just one of the most charismatic, naturally charismatic people. And if you ever talked to him for 5 minutes, you just fell in love with the guy. He's actually an athletic director down at the South Shore area, like Fairhaven, Bourne, those kind of things.
Okay.
And anybody that was ever a student of his, because he coaches basketball, football, referees, all that stuff, the guy's just so active in his community and his students. Every one of them loves him, like just loves him. He's just one of those guys that just, he never has a complete sentence. You know what I mean? He'll talk. This is how he talks. He goes, yeah, so I called her on the thing, right? And I was like, hey, let's maybe have a little gimmick. And then I Google boxed it, I gimmick boxed it, and then here we are.
Yeah.
And then you just knew what he meant.
To a T, exactly the first conversation I ever had with him.
Yeah. You, me, what, right? Flipper, bing, bada, boom. And that was how you called the match.
Yes.
That was it. And just somehow you knew I'm going to take a forearm, a punch, maybe an elbow, drop kick, and then it's the end.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how the match went. It was zipper, bing, boom, boom. That's it.
Pretty fantastic. So
amazing.
How long did Chunky But Funky last? And then did you, because there's a point, as you previously mentioned, that you transitioned to being a booker.
Yeah.
How long did you work for before you started transitioning to booking?
So I worked, so if that was 2002 that I booked for Sheldon, so I started in 94. So I'm guessing, I didn't book very long for Sheldon. I'm guessing 2001 to 2003, maybe I was in there somewhere. And then whenever WFA started, that was 2002, 2003, right?
Yes, I think it was late 2002,
So
maybe early.
I booked for Sheldon a little
03.
bit. Scott Dickinson was the booker, was transitioning out, asked me if I wanted to step in. He was come to the show, and I didn't know why, so I went to an NECW show. It was Chris Nowinski's first match. And I was there, and he's like, hey, you have any interest in booking? I was like, I've always had an interest in booking. He's like, well, this is going to be yours. I was like, all right, cool. Like, it was fun. And so I did that, and I didn't really work as much because my head was in that. You know, I would take bookings for like Bob and those kind of things, and but not really work a whole lot. And then when Steve started, because I had known Steve since he was 16 years old, I go, I'm going to hang with Steve, plus it's much closer to home. And that's what I did. I transitioned out of Sheldon's, and probably not the right way, like not professional way. I think I just kind of stopped going, just like stopped taking his calls. You know what I mean? So not the right way for sure. And then I just hung out with Steve, and then did that, and then just started working again. So 8 years, I guess, 7 years, 8 years before I transitioned into a booker. Not nearly as long as your brother Tarzan. Did you know you was a booker?
I had heard that somewhere, yes.
You did? Yeah.
All right, so you're saying that you booked for a couple, you said 8 years or so?
Yeah, I worked for 7 or 8 years before I took over the book.
Okay.
And then I didn't even take over a book. I got handed a book, and it was for Sheldon, and it was probably a good learning experience because I think Sheldon wanted to be the promoter, didn't want to have to be that guy. But it was also tough to deal with because like one of the first things I wanted to do was get rid of Springgate because I just didn't think it was, I thought the act was old. I didn't think his work was all that good. I wanted to get rid of Wagner, Slick Wagner Brown, because again, I just think he wasn't as good as he thought he was, but everybody kissed his ass. So I thought he became lazy. He became a guy that I love Wagner today. Like Wagner and I get along great. But at the time, I think he's a guy who only wanted to work top matches, only wanted to work main events, would get upset if he wasn't, like if Doug Williams was coming in and he wasn't working with him. So I go, well, if that's the way he's going to be, fucking now you're in a program with Justin Shape. You know?
Oh my God, I remember this.
Yeah.
It's good to know that my perception at the time is kind of reality.
Yeah.
Because I remember like Wagner kind of, like a lot of people were fawning over him, and it probably, you know, at the time probably had a big head about it.
Yeah, you can, but I don't think you can help but have a big head. Like if everybody's telling you how great you are, no matter how humble you are, there's a piece of you that goes, "Yeah, I know I'm great."
Happened
know
to
what I
me.
mean? Yeah, it happens to all of us, right? It just you get a little bit of that verbal blowjob, and you're like, "Fucking, I'm pretty fucking good. I'm probably gonna get signed."
I remember at the time him having working with Justin Shape, because we were in NECW at that time. And I remember wondering, why is this program happening? It seems very strange. And I remember Wagner clearly not happy about it.
Not happy, and that's why it happened. That's why I booked it, because I was like, well, this kid's going to have to learn how to work a different style, because Justin wasn't going 100 miles an hour. You know Justin. Justin was Gimmick. Justin was all Gimmick, but could still go. You know what I mean? Like, just a completely different style than Wagner was doing at the time. So I thought it was actually going to be good. I probably didn't lay it out correctly, and I probably wasn't at the time mature enough to say, hey, listen, this is what I'm doing it because of this. You know, it's going to make you better in the long run. It's going to make both of you better in the long run. So just shut the fuck up and do it, right? And make the best of it. Instead, I was like, no, this is your fucking match. This is how I want it. Go fucking do it, you know? And it just became volatile, you know? And Wagner's another guy who's just like, he doesn't want to play. Tell him to fucking stay home. Oh, we can't. He's our star. I'm like, yeah, but he's not. Wrestling is your star. Nobody's drawing these tickets. Wrestling's drawing the tickets. You know, and Sheldon, we differed in opinions on that. So,
Speaking of Sheldon Goldberg, previous guest of Truth, Justice, and the New England Pro Wrestling Way, I know that you, Sonny Goodspeed, had said that you kind of, when you discovered us, started trying to listen through it all. I don't know if you've listened to his episode, but he does actually mention you and comments on your booking. So Sheldon Goldberg did say that at the time when you booked, you did well. It's just you didn't see the big picture. Would you agree with his statement or disagree, or would you like to argue it?
So I'm not going to argue it because he has his opinion. I don't think that if he was trying to articulate a big picture to me, he wasn't articulating it well enough. He did say that like we'd have a lot of the same finishes on the show. And if by that he means pinfall finishes, then yeah, we did do that because, you know, it is a contest after all, right? So there has to be pinfall finishes. So if there's 2 pinfalls in a row, I'm okay with that. Right?
Yeah, I mean, that's the object of the match.
Like, you don't want to see every baseball game end in a tie, right? They go, well, it's been 38 innings, guys. We're throwing in the towel, right? It's tied 1-1. You don't want to see fuck finishes and, you know, every match, right? You have to have, people have to go over because that's how you build guys, right? And you can still build yourself in doing the job. So that's kind of how I always looked at it. Like, you know, like I remember watching wrestling. This is how I always looked at booking. Like, you'd watch wrestling on Saturday night, 6:05 WTBS, right? You'd see Ric Flair have a competitive match with a guy like George South for 13 minutes. There's no way that that's happened because Raging Bull Manny Fernandez just last week beat George South in 13 seconds, right? Yeah. But now Ric Flair's having a competitive 13-minute match or a 14-minute match with him. That's how I kind of wanted things, right? So you kept George up, knowing that he was never going to be the world champion, but he might sneak out a victory over the Koloffs or something, you know, the evil Russians or whatever. But he's never going to be the top star, right? So that's kind of what I wanted. I always wanted, like, not 50-50 booking, but I wanted to, you had your top couple of angles, and then everything else underneath was building, right? So if Wagner got signed, or you had somebody to step up, right? Because they had some wins under the belt, the fans are behind them. So that's the way I looked at it. I don't think we talked enough about what the game plan was for NECW, because it seemed, in my opinion, Sheldon may disagree. Every time we talked, it was about Howard Brody's Ring Warriors and and how he's going to do stuff with him, and how we're going to try, how NECW is going to roll into that, and because it just was never about, hey, how are we going to get more tickets sold for the next Somerville show? How are we going to get out of Somerville? Like, we need to grow out of Somerville. We need to move like different locations. It was never that kind of big picture stuff. It was always like, we're going to start at level A and then we're jumping right to Z. There was no build, So Sheldon saw big picture, but he saw giant picture, but with no ladder to get there. It was always just, we're just going to pole vault there or something, So that was my opinion on how it went.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so after you transitioned out of booking back to being a full-time worker, at what point did you decide to wrap it up and kind of step away from all of it?
So 2008, I was way overweight, like unhealthy, overweight. I was unhealthy. I remember my doctor saying to me that I was an enigma. Because at the time I was 430 pounds.
What a great description.
Yeah, but my cholesterol was good, my sugars were good. But she was like, but you're walking a tightrope here at 430 pounds. You're gonna fall. Like, it's gonna happen. It's just a matter of when. So I go, I really got to get my life together, and I had tried diets. I'd lose 60 pounds and gain back 70, and so I go, you know what? I'm just going to do it. So I started looking into the gastric bypass surgery. I went to the classes they make you go to, because you have to go see, you have to sit through it and make sure that mentally you're okay with it, right? And so I went through all that, and then they go, listen, before you can have the surgery, you need to lose 21 pounds. I was like, oh my God, 21 pounds. I was like, all right, 21 pounds. I lost 90.
Wow.
I lost 90 before my surgery.
Damn.
So they go, we're bumping your surgery up. You're going to have surgery September. I was like, perfect. So I went and had the surgery in September. I lost another 80 after that. So I lost 170 pounds. I got down to 262 pounds. And I felt fucking amazing. But just like those verbal blowjobs in wrestling, hey, you're really good. Your armbar's great, right? Same thing, Sonny, you're looking good. I'm like, yeah, man. And then I just stopped doing everything that got me to 262 pounds. And with the gastric bypass surgery, I had the band, right? So I knew as soon as I took a bite of something, if it was going to stay or if I was going to throw it up. And I go, well, if I'm going to throw it up, I'm going to eat the whole fucking thing anyway, because what do I care, right? I'm fucking throwing it up. I could eat I could have a bite of pizza and go, oh, that's going to work. Or I'd take a bite of a pizza and I'd go, that's coming up. So I would eat the whole fucking thing. And then I would step outside. I remember me, Joey Eastman, Dave, Billy Wolf, Big Scott. I think that was all of us. Took a ride to Chicago one time. And I was doing party tricks, essentially, the whole ride of there. Every time we stopped somewhere, I would eat something and throw it up in the parking lot. That was like for entertainment. You know what I mean? I could throw up on cue. Joey and I and Scott went to a show in Easton, Pennsylvania one time when Scott was just meeting with Mike Quackenbush to become part of Devastation Corporation. And we went to this restaurant called Parker's or something like that. And we had an amazing service. She was so fucking awesome. The manager was a dick, just being a real asshole. And she was upset because he was berating her and stuff. So I remember I watched him clean the bathroom, mop it, right? And I go, all right, guys, I'll be right back. So they went out to the front door. I went to the bathroom. I opened up the door, and I just threw up everything I just ate on his floor. Like, I didn't even step inside. I just opened the door and just went, Joey and Scott said they heard it from the entrance. I just let the door shut, and I walked out, and we drove back home. I was like, fuck that guy. But, yeah, so anyway, so I had that surgery, and I lost all the weight, and I go, I'm ready to come back. So I had the surgery in September. I got all the way down to, like I said, 265, 270 in like February. And I think that's when Doc and I talked about, at the time I said, I really want to work with Chaotic. Chaotic was the number one wrestling group in New England. It was the top.
And just a perspective, what year?
This would have been 2009.
Okay.
Yeah, 2009. Yeah. So I said, well, before we do that, I said, let's do some other stuff. So we had worked for Mike Milano, I think that was his name, down in Connecticut.
Yep, for DPW.
Yeah, he ended up passing away.
Yes, he did.
So we went down, and Mike was awesome because he knew Doc because Doc worked for him. He had heard of me. Great having you here. Do whatever you want to do. Just go ahead and do it. So we literally had carte blanche, and we were working with Billy King. Do you remember Billy King?
Oh yeah.
Billy King did not look like a wrestler, but that kid was so fucking good, right? So he had another partner, and they were like the frat boys or something. They were just drunks. So we were intervention, right? So we were like the straight lace, like we're gonna fucking set you straight. We're gonna beat you sober kind of thing, and just a strong heel faction, and working with these young kids and having good matches. And then we're like, all right. Doc was working for Chaotic at the time. He said, "Hey, I want to come in with this thing." So we came in into Chaotic, and I didn't have fun there. It was not a fun locker room. Like
it's that Chaotic Wrestling has always had that stigma, the unfun, cliquey, just pressure heavy locker room, and that a lot of people don't have fun being at.
Yeah.
I won't name names, and I know that's very against my, but I don't want to bury him. But
wow, look who's good brother or something.
yeah, I just don't want to hurt their career. But there have been a few people as of late that have told me they currently still don't like being at a Chaotic show or don't want to go to a Chaotic show because it's still got somewhat that feel.
It's very, very bizarre. Like, I don't know. Like, I've been around a long time, just in life. You know what I mean? And just I fit in. And I'm not just blowing smoke up in my ass for us. I fit in any situation I get put in. You can put me anywhere, I'm gonna fit in. I never felt so out of place in a place that I belonged. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, just sit there and like look around, and you can just see. You could see the cliques. It was like high school. Like, it was the groups of people just spread around the locker room. And it was so bizarre to me. I was like, this is like, this group isn't talking to this group, not talking to this group, to this group. It was so bizarre. I just felt so uncomfortable. So I'd gravitate towards Fuller because I had known Fuller for a long time. So we would chat. And then I always got along with like the Logans. The Logans call me Uncle Sonny. And so I'd chat with them. You know what I mean? But Chase, I love Chase today. Thought Chase was a complete douche. You know what I mean? Back then. And it was just so bizarre to me. Like, it was so bizarre, and I just never felt more uncomfortable. Just like, then I remember at one point, remember you guys were bringing in Mike Bucci? Were you around then?
I don't think so. I started
Simon Dean, is that his name?
Yeah, that was before my time. I started 2008.
No.
Okay.
2007, 2008. So,
all right. So this is okay. So I don't know when this was in. So I remember he was at a show and he was watching he's like, I'm going to watch the show, guys, and I'm going to tell you how y'all did. And I'm like, all right, watching. And I remember at my point, I'm like, I'm not trying to get signed. I'm beyond this point. Like, he's going to tell me you need to do more than headlocks, and I'm going to tell him to go fuck off, right? So I remember him watching the show, but he never picked his head up from his phone. And I think at the time he was working for the WWE, and he just never picked his head up from the phone. And then we all get back in the locker room afterwards, and he was shitting on everybody and every match. And I went to go stand up, and I was ready to just tell him to fuck off, like, you know, like, you didn't watch a fucking thing. And Doc just grabbed me and sat me back down. He goes, "This isn't the place." I go, and I just remember, I go, "This is it. I'm fucking. I was done. I was burnt out. I was angry. I was like, yeah, I'm fucking done." So I stopped, and I kept getting booked. I just stopped showing up. Like, Todd Sopel booked me. I'll be, yeah, man, I'll be there. Fucking yeah. Oh, PBD, yeah, no problem. PBD, 7 o'clock. Yeah, I'll be there. And then just time to leave, and I'll just be sitting there. She goes, "Don't you have a show?" My wife would say, "Don't you have a show?" I'd be like, "Yeah, but I'm not going." She'd go, "All right." So she said, "Well, you at least going to call him?" No, just not going to show. So
I feel like a lot of people step out of wrestling for one or two things. It's either an injury or it's just being burnt out through the negativity of wrestling.
That's what it was. I knew I wasn't that guy. You know, I'm not literally, my name is Sonny, and I just realized this at 47 years old, that I was always the fat kid. You know what I mean? I was always going to get picked on. But if I could develop a personality that would deflect all that, and I think it matches the name Sonny. Like, I'm a ray of fucking sunshine. You know what I mean? I'm pretty positive. I'm a funny guy. I'm humorous. I make jokes at myself, at other people's expense, whatever the case is. But I'm a pretty positive guy in all aspects of things. And I didn't like what I became. I was an angry, bitter man, and that just wasn't me. It didn't feel good to me. I didn't look good in that, and I said, I need to break away from this and just kick back and relax and get back to myself. And it took me a couple of years. Like, I stayed away from wrestling for a long time, and then I don't even remember what it was, what the catalyst was for me to come back. I was just missing it, and miss seeing the guys. And I came to the NEPWA a couple of times, and Brian's like, "Oh, you should come more often." I'm like, "Yeah, okay." And then I started showing up more, and I love it. So I remember I'm working for started helping with Mike Morris over in APW,
yep.
and at the time they were still running a school out in Salisbury, and then Mike King, Stiff Mike, had just taken it over just in that time frame. And Stiff said, "I really want you to help here," and I was like, "Perfect." So I wouldn't show up to Chaotic or at NEPWA, and I'd go to the Stiff Mike, right? And I'd see Brian and be like, "Oh, you go there, but you won't fucking come here?" And I go, "Brian, I feel like I can help there, like you guys have your thing going on here." He's like, or I'd go to their shows and help out, and he'd be like, "You don't come to my shows?" And I'm like, I don't feel like I can offer anything. He's like, "Sonny," he goes, "You don't feel like you can tell these guys anything that's going to make them fucking better?" And I went, "Yeah, I guess I can." Like, he fucking kind of set me straight. That him saying that to me made me go, well, maybe I do have something to offer, and there is a place for me, and it made me start feeling good again. So now I'm at the training center, either Tuesday or Thursday night. I go to all the shows. I help however I can, and like tonight I got APW out in Beverly, and whatever I can do to offer to help. Like, if people want my advice, or people want, well, sometimes if they want it or not, I'm offering it, and just, I'm in a much better place. I can still tell you how to do things better without being a dick about it. I've realized there's a softer way to do it. You know what I mean? And I'm having fun again. So that's good.
So we're going to take a break. Then when we come back, we're going to do the finishing touches on Sonny Goodspeed's career. And then we are going to hop into the comparison of wrestling then versus now. More here on Truth, Justice, and the New England Pro Wrestling Way.
I'm pro wrestler the Kingpin Brian Malonis.
And I'm referee Mike Crockett from the Wrestling Podcast About Nothing.
I spent most of my weekends half naked in front of throngs of people at VFW halls and Elks Lodges.
And I've watched, not that there's anything wrong with that. Every week, listen to us tear down the curtain and tear down each other in the process.
It's the WPAN. Nothing more, nothing less.
New episodes Mondays on your favorite podcast app or on our website, thewpan.com.
So you lie to yourself to be happy. There's nothing wrong with that. We all do it. Who cares if there's a few little details you'd rather not remember? You don't want the truth. You make up your own truth, like your police file.
And we're back with more Truth, Justice, and the New England Pro Wrestling Way with my fellow host of today's episode, Mark Vincent. Mark, you've been kind of quiet in this one. Don't have much to contribute, I assume, or it's just because it's your first podcast?
Yeah, it's my first podcast as a guest or host. So, and Sonny is the guest; he has a lot to say. So,
is it because we still have heat because I had that kid kick you in the face?
Well, clearly, I'm bringing it up 20 years later. So.
That's true. Yeah, I thought we talked about letting things go, Mark. Whatever.
So, the topic of episode 18 is to compare wrestling then to now, and so we just got a good insight on Sonny Goodspeed's career, but now I want to kind of jump into comparing wrestling then versus now. Both Mark Vincent and Sonny Goodspeed have been around wrestling for quite some time, been involved in one way or another, and then I, for the most part, assume still watch the current product today.
I do, yeah.
So I guess I'll ask both of you, what is your overall take in differences between wrestling then versus now? Let's go with like just wrestling style.
So wrestling style, clearly a lot faster, a lot faster today than it was back then. But I still think that the same story's being told, just at a clip. You know what I mean? People still write books the same way, tell movies the same way. I think wrestling's still the same. It's just now our audience is different, so we almost have to cater to that audience. You know what I mean? To get somebody to pull their head up from the phone off of Instagram or Twitter or Facebook, because that's where everything is. If something happens, you're hearing it instantly, as opposed to waiting for the next day to see it in the newspaper or the next night on the channel 6 o'clock news. You're getting it instantly, and I think that's created as a society a people that want it now, right? So they don't want to watch a wrestling match that goes on for 15 minutes and it starts out with arm bars and reversals. You know what I mean? They want to get right to the action. Like, they're waiting for it, and that's what they want. So now I think the guys coming in today are taught and catered to that style. I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing. I used to think it was a bad thing, right? Like, even when I started, like, I remember old timers in saying, "Hey, less is more, kid. Less is more." And I'm like, less than a head scissors? You know what I mean? Like, how can I do less than a head scissors? But now it's I find myself saying the same thing. But we've been at the school when we talked about less is more. It's less is more, but it's a different less. It doesn't, and going slow doesn't mean fucking at a snail's pace working a headlock. It just means take the time to tell that same story, just using what you guys are doing now. It's so even from when you started not long ago, 10, 13 years ago,
Yep.
it's different than it is today. From when you started in 99, different from when I started in 94. You know what I mean? It's constantly changing. But the story still stays the same. You know what I mean? There's still the shine. There's still the heat. There's still the comeback. It's just how it's told is completely different,
That's what so on our friends over at the WPA and the Wrestling Podcast About Nothing, I had listened to one of their episodes and I can't remember the name, so forgive me, but one of their episodes was an intervention from Michael Crockett. And it was about the fact that he doesn't watch the wrestling product and he kind of isn't in touch with it. And Brian Fury had made a lot of good points that I kept myself open-minded enough to analyze. And so what he had said on that podcast was that wrestling's still the same as it was in the 80s and the 90s. The only difference is as you just stated, stories are different, or the way that they're told is being different. People, there's still big stars, small stars, middle, there's still the tier group. Wrestling isn't as, I guess, publicly popular as it used to be, whereas like you used to see wrestlers in movies and you used to see them in commercials, and I mean it still is, but I guess it's blended in with everything else. And so, but I can see where Michael Crockett's saying too is he had said over there that he just doesn't see the picture because, I mean, back when you guys started, you guys watched Hulk Hogan and Roddy Piper,
Bob Backlund,
but you watched people who were bigger than life. And then you move to the 90s and you have The Rock, Undertaker, Austin, Triple H,
Bret Hart,
Shawn Michaels, and these guys were still larger than life and were everywhere. And it just feels like now that, as you stated, earlier in this episode, it feels like wrestling is a draw and not the wrestlers.
You're absolutely. That's how I feel. I don't think. I think that Vince kind of, because he had his stars go away and he didn't have the next guy in line to step up and be the next Hulk Hogan or be the next Stone Cold. I think that he took that away from the guys. I don't know. I don't have any insight, but I kind of feel like that he's building. Wrestling is the product, and the players are interchangeable.
Mark Sherman.
That's a problem. Like, I get so annoyed, like when people, not you, but like you're saying how wrestling is the draw, and that's what you hear the defense all the time. Wrestling's the draw, not the wrestler. They're not drawing like they used to. You can say it's great to be a worker. There's plenty of places to work nowadays, but they just don't draw like they did 20 years ago, 15 years ago even. And I mean, it's not like I have the answers here or anything, but there are less people watching now than we're watching. 10 million people were watching every week back in the when you were watching wrestling, the late 90s, during the Attitude Era. And where did all those people go? And I know the way television is and everything, this is bound to happen, but wrestling overall just is not as popular as it used to be and probably never will.
And I would say that wrestling in general, then versus now, I mean, then wrestling, like you said, was more or less cool. It was just cool to do. They had like cool shirts, you had cool catchphrases, you had cool, little signals that you can throw at people, like the suck it or whatever, and like people knew what was up, and like
too
that
sweet.
Yeah, so these were all things that people could kind of relate to and think. And there's none of that anymore. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not staring at someone across the way and like jerking my wrist off, and they're like looking at me going like, "Yeah, Roman Reigns."
Yeah.
They're looking at me like, "Dude, he's a pervert." Like,
Right.
So
stay away from my kids.
Yeah. So yeah, especially if you do that at Chuck E. Cheese, like
they don't like
immediate arrest. But it's like it's just. I feel like it's just changed in. It's just, here's how I look at it. I feel like there's wrestling fans, and now there's hateful fans who just see nothing but negative, aka Michael Crockett, and then there's wrestling advocates. And I do believe that there are people out there that are just, there's nothing that wrestling can do wrong. Intergender wrestling, I think, stupid. Nope, it's the greatest thing ever to them.
What's your thought on it?
Intergender wrestling? I don't think I want to get started on this topic.
I know your brother's a huge fan of it.
Yeah.
He's trying to start a Facebook page about intergender wrestling and how great it is.
Yeah, that sounds legit.
But let's just jump back into what we usually talk about, which is always New England wrestling. As far as both of you go, what do you feel has changed as far as trying to get bookings? Like, how did you get bookings back in the day?
So I remember literally, I was working with guys like from that Fall River, New Bedford area, Taunton, whatever, Massachusetts, guys from Maine, guys from Vermont. They'd all come in because at the time there was Killer Kowalski's, there's Top Rope, and then there was us, right? In Ringside Wrestling out of Nashua that were running. So those guys, the Rebels, so the Renegades, would go work for the other shows. So that's how you would get those bookings, right? You'd be like, hey, any chance I can, come down, I'll put in a word for you, right? Because if there's 40 guys in New England, 10 of them were good, and they're all trying to get on shows, So we'd all show up at these shows and say, introduce ourselves, and the promoters at the time would be like, yeah, I heard of you, or I haven't heard of you, but, if you want to help out tonight, we'll see what we can do, and then you'd show up to shows and just wait and see what would happen, right? Or we'd send out our 8x10s if we were going to go anywhere. We'd send out literally 8x10s with our resumes on the back, trained by, worked for. And when I say worked for, it wasn't like worked for Alphabet Soup. It wasn't CWP and PGG. It was worked for Joe Smith and Davy Crockett or whatever. You know what I mean? And you would put phone numbers and for references, right? Like a job resume.
Yeah.
Except it was a picture, right? And you would put your stats in there. I'm 6'2", 260 pounds, and you'd show up and you're 5'10", and 360 pounds. And you'd be like, I put on a couple of pounds. And they'd be like, you lost a couple of inches too? But you literally, because it wasn't, now if I was booking a show and I wanted to book somebody, I'd say, hey, send me some shit. I'd have it in 8 seconds on my in my instant messenger or whatever, you know what I mean? It's completely different. You actually had to do, when Bob Evans says do the drives, there's no other way to do it. You had to drive to these shows, take the chance of them saying, hey, did you bring your gear with you? Because somebody didn't show up or whatever, and you always have your gear with you. Completely different.
I'm flashing back to when I was first in wrestling, when I first had to get booked a second place, basically, because I started, with Jeff Costa, and you trained there, you worked on the shows, and I never had to think about booking elsewhere, getting booked elsewhere. So at one point, they stopped booking my brother, and me and Tarzan had a minor falling out about it. And I continued to work there, but then Jeff was only running like once a month. Mm-hmm. So I didn't have Tarzan to guide me, and I couldn't ask my promoter, hey, how do I get booked elsewhere? But I remember, I had to send, a videotape of a match.
Like an actual cassette?
Yeah, cassette tape of me in a match with Big Daddy Walker. And like you said, like an 8x10 with a description on the back, and I sent it to various places, and including Steve Ricard, and was booking for Top Rope at the time. I don't know if he's still around.
He owns it.
Oh, does he?
Yeah.
Okay, and that's how I got booked there. But it's just so weird because now, like you're saying, email. You have smartphones. You have social media. You can get your information out there instantly. Although I don't know how competitive it is now because everyone can do that.
I had talked to some of the newer talent in today's wrestling, and the way that they stated that you get booked is basically tag along. You don't message bookers. You don't have interactions with bookers as far as that goes, because that makes you seem like you're hard up for a booking, that you literally just tag along with someone, and then you have that, like, said wrestler, say I'm a wrestler and I'm booked, I bring Sonny with me and I go, hey, blah, 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 by the way, this is Sonny Goodspeed. He's ready to work if you need a worker. And that's how you get bookings. Or it's even changed from that to show up and do ring crew, and then everyone will have information on you, basically, that if you can work or not, and then it's just if they have an open spot, they'll use you or they won't. And so you guys used to send out resumes, and now it's just, believe what I say, and this guy can do it.
Exactly. I still, to this day, if I'm going to go to a show that I haven't been to, I did this. I've known Brian since the day he started, right?
Yeah. Brian Fury?
Okay. I remember messaging him when I wanted to come to a chaotic show. Brian, I'd like to come to the show tonight. Is it okay? Like, would you leave my name at the door? Is it okay if I show up? He was like, yeah, of course, right? Yeah. I remember sending a message to Mike Morris at APW. My name is Sonny. Introducing myself because I don't know who knows me. Like, I don't want to be a mark and think, fucking everybody knows Sonny Goodspeed. Yeah. But with like my own little resume. But now instead of sending an 8x10, I'm sending it on an instant messenger. I'm saying, hey, my name is Sonny Goodspeed. I've been around a long time. Brian Malonis can vouch for me or whatever. I'd love to come check out the show and help out however I can. And then not hearing from him for like a couple of weeks, I'm like, really, nobody knows who the fuck I am anymore. Like, and then him getting back and going, oh, yeah, absolutely, man. Come by anytime. But I still send out that message before I would just show up at the door somewhere and go, I'm Sonny Goodspeed. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, just expecting them to know who I am. But I'm not the guy. I'm way too old. I'm not helping with your ring. I'm not setting up fucking chairs for you. You know what I mean? But I'll come and help out with the show. Like, you need help putting this match together. You have to run an idea by. But I still send out that message saying, hey, I'd like to come by if it's okay. Like, I just don't. I just wouldn't show up at a show unannounced.
From what I know, a lot of students do it nowadays. I remember a Lucky Pro show, and I think one person got booked, and literally, like, at the time, 13 of our students just showed up to do ring crew, unannounced, from what I was told.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that is so weird. Like, why are you just a bunch of random, like, hello?
Yeah.
Like, it's just, I don't know, wrestling's changed.
It's changed.
And I don't know. I don't know how no one feels awkward doing that. So with change, I assume that as you stated before, Sonny, the work styles have changed. Back in the day, you said you guys would like lock up and work a headlock for like 2-3 minutes before you even move on to a spot. Whereas now, like you said, people want to. Do you feel like that causes more injuries in New England, or causes more wear and tear, or just less excitement?
I definitely don't think less excitement. I think it's
Sorry, let me reiterate. When I say less excitement, I mean, like, does that spoil the crowd too much to the point where, like, now you're like, dude, I got to pull out a gun in this match and shoot him because.
Yeah, I absolutely do agree. And for a long time, I was hot about that, and I hated everything about the change, right, that was happening in wrestling. But then you look around, literally, you just look around in society, everything is changing. Like, mobile apps, so you can order your Dunkin' Donuts and then just walk up, show them your thing, and there it is for you, right? You can do your grocery shopping at Walmart, and they bring it to your fucking car for you. You don't even have to get out of your car. So everything has changed for that. So am I, at some point, what's the old saying is like, change is inevitable, suffering is optional.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
So you can either roll with it, or you can sit back and be that old curmudgeon sitting on your deck yelling at the kids, get off my fucking lawn. So you kind of have to adapt and just like, it took me a while, but you sit back and I talk to guys, and then you start to understand it. And like I had the hardest time with the first time I saw the slow motion thing.
Oh, yeah. Like
slow motion
people
wrestling?
throwing grenades or whatever. Yeah.
Like, remember in Chicago, they had the ice cream?
Yes.
And they threw sprinkles, and the guys bumped on sprinkles?
Yes.
I was like, what? The imaginary sprinkles? I didn't get it. But then you watch the crowd react to it, and they fucking pop huge, and because that's what they like. It's a niche crowd, and that's what they're into. You're not going to see 8 matches of that, but for that show, for that time, PWG, Tommaso sticking his thumb up people's asses and doing the walking around thing with 8 guys and Jushin Lagers in it.
Yeah.
You go, well, what am I missing? Maybe it's just me.
Maybe it's just me being an old guy and not wanting to watch wrestling.
If you meet one asshole in a day, he's probably an asshole. If you meet 11 assholes in a day, I'm the asshole.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. So I just thought about it, and I go, it's probably not as bad as I think. It's because guys before me were saying, oh, fucking look at this asshole. He threw a fucking drop kick. You know what I mean? Like,
I bet you if you talk to the casual fan, they would have a different perspective, because the reason why I think it's so prevalent is because, or I guess it's so negative, is because we're all workers in the business, or have been workers in the business. So we've been exposed. We know the magic. We know what. Plus, we're a product of. I mean, you're a product of Learn How to Work.
Yeah.
You're a product of. Mark Vincent, product of Learn How to Work.
Yep.
I was actually a product of Learn How to Work, because I had people from Mike Hollow to Todd Smith to, Malonis to Brian Fury. To Brian Fury to this day. I mean, you just said it yourself. You're at the school all the time.
Yeah.
Do we ever tell people, like, okay, when you do tackle, drop down, leapfrog, hip toss, arm drag, body slam, you need to clothesline over the top and follow up immediately with a suicide dive, throw them right back in, and then do a frog splash and cover them for 2.5. We don't teach it.
No.
But that is the wrestling that is getting over today. So I think it's because we're all a product of learning how to work.
Yes.
Is why we look at this and we go, look at these fucking idiots who don't know how to work.
and that's the thing. The kids coming out of, I'm going to say Nepois, they're learning how to work. It's just the society dictates that this is what they want, right? So I think they have to learn how to work, but then meld in that style. I think you said something earlier. You said casual fan. I don't think there's casual fans anymore. I don't. I think there's casual fans in the sense that, like, somebody's throwing a WrestleMania party. We'll go over for the party. It just happens to be that it's WrestleMania. But I don't think there's a casual fan going, Monday Night Football's on tonight. I'm going to watch Raw. I don't think there's that anymore. I think you're either a fan or you're not.
Yeah, there are no casual, or very few casual fans left. It's just wrestling fans left.
I agree with you guys. I think there's just either hardcore wrestling fans who just, I need to watch wrestling every night, or former workers, or I don't know, just critics, I guess. Mm-hmm. But there's no one like my mom and dad in the 90s. They would, because they used to be a casual fan.
Right.
They would every now and again be like, tune into Raw and be like, ha ha ha, this, that, and the other thing. And they'd be like, this is cool. They'd be like, call me in the room. Yeah, there's none of that now. Yeah. There's a lot of people that flip past it. It's funny you say, and this is going to play on, I don't want to jump back into WWE because it's not our thing, but we actually, my girlfriend Susanna has a friend, her name's Mandy, and her husband Rob, and you could consider a casual fan. The one thing after so much time that got them hooked was Bray Wyatt. And it's because he's a huge character. It's like what we relate to in professional wrestling. So they were flipping through the channel. They saw Bray Wyatt and they went, whoa, what's this? And now they tune in only to see Bray Wyatt.
Yeah.
That's literally what they've shared with us. So I know that contradicts us saying there's no casual fans, but I guess what I'm trying to hammer home is, and that's what I want to transition into, is in New England wrestling. Back in the day, you had Chunky But Funky, you had Tony Roy, you had all these guys, French guy, you had these rock and roll band,
and the
Noise
Indians,
Boys,
and the Polacks.
Yeah. So you had gimmicks back then, think characters that you wanted to see go to battle,
Right.
and now it feels like an MMA match. Where you have Mark Vincent against Sonny Goodspeed. You have Josh Briggs against Anthony Green. You have, D.L. Hurst against Mike Verna.
Right.
And there's like a resemblance of a character. I mean, Mike Verna walks out and rips his chest like he's Superman, but then he's Michael Verna.
Yeah, he's player A.
Yeah, exactly. So, I guess in your opinion, why do you feel characters transitioned from these big, ridiculous ordeals to just guys?
In my opinion, I think so you went from a guy like, say, Hulk Hogan, who when I started watching, Hogan was probably 6'5", probably 320 pounds, just a ginormous man,
He's
right?
an American superhero.
Yeah. And then you had a guy who's Bret Hart, who's 6 foot tall, maybe 225 pounds. All right. I could see a 6 foot tall, 225 pound guy at my grocery store. You know what I mean? So I think the model of the professional wrestler changed, and the younger, smaller, more athletic guys became the standard versus the Hulk Hogans and the Big Boss Mans and the Akeems and one man gangs and all those King Kong Bundys. You know what I mean? Those became less and less of a thing. And then when they were around, like the Great Khali, what did he ever do? You know what I mean? Like, was he ever a draw? He wasn't, because times changed.
In the beginning, I feel like he was. Because everyone was like, whoa, who's this, 8-foot monster with the,
but he had
Easter Island head jaw.
No longevity, though, because that's all.
And it's like Big Show. Big Show should have been, like, his first 10 years in the business, he should have just been a monster and booked that way, like an attraction, like Andre the Giant was. You didn't see Andre the Giant every week on TV having competitive matches because he was a giant.
We're supposed to be talking about New England wrestling, but it's hard not to jump into the WWE thing. But to play on that, Braun Strowman. Braun Strowman came in, was a monster. They started pushing him. They never actually put the title on him, and now he's literally just a mid-card joke.
Yeah. He's still a huge guy. But then you look at a guy like, when he stands next to like a Drew Galloway or Luke Gallows, or Drew McIntyre or whatever, and Luke Gallows, same size guy, you know what I mean? He doesn't look that impressive anymore because now but it's just and as far as New England goes, you don't have the Noise Boys anymore. You don't have a 300-pound lobster man. You don't have dancing Duke Daltons.
But why do you feel that is?
I think it's because I think society dictated that it changes. I think society dictated that it gets away from, minus the Marvel movies, is there another superhero guy?
No.
It's Jack Reacher, the guy from Tom Cruise, whatever his gimmick name was in Mission Impossibles, that do 6 films, you know what I mean? The Fast and the Furious brand. These are just normal guys, you know what I mean? They're none of them have superpowers. None of them are larger than life, really. I think that everything just went that way. And I think wrestling, again, had to adapt or be left behind. And same thing with who's the last big quarterback in football that's a huge star, right?
If you're talking I'd say Tom Brady is, I think, now.
Yeah.
Back then, Peyton Manning.
Yeah, but he's finished.
Yeah, he is.
But back when I was a kid and you were a kid, right? We had Joe Montana, Dan Marino. We had, after Joe Montana, there was Steve Young. There was Randall Cunningham. There was 8 or 10 guys in an NFL league that were all fucking superstars. They stood above the rest. Now you've got Tom Brady and 35 other guys. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think you had a good point when you brought up Bray Wyatt, though. It's I think that athleticism will always impress, of course. Like my wife, at best a casual fan, she would just watch occasionally and would always be impressed by Rey Mysterio and luchadors and stuff like that. But when I would watch clips of Bray Wyatt recently with the whole fun house, that caught our attention just because it's so different, It's like a bigger thing, if that makes sense.
No, you're right. And that's
we're getting way away from actually talking about New England wrestling.
Yes, but I'm going to bring it back to New England and say that's a lot of stuff that I always talk about nowadays with people, which is funny to hear from me because, again, I was never a character guy wrestling. I was an athletic guy. I would have been able to do today's style of wrestling then, but I wish I'd always been a Bray Wyatt or a Thomas Penmanship or even the Duke of Elegance. I loved characters, but I could never do one because I didn't know what fit me.
The vignettes with Duke of Elegance, right?
Yeah.
Super freaking entertaining.
Yeah.
So along the same lines, right, you had Team Friendship. You had Mark Sherman and Scotty Slade. I didn't go to a chaotic show. I would watch those freaking videos, though, because they were super fucking entertaining. But I didn't go to the shows and watch them team because watching them wrestle isn't the same as watching them entertain me. Same as the Firehouse. What I don't know what it's called.
Firefly Funhouse.
And
Yeah,
by the
that
way,
thing.
you could have done all the athletics you were doing back in the day, but what clicked with the crowd? Your stupid dancing.
Exactly. That was
Yeah,
another
I
thing.
remember you brought this up a couple episodes
Yes,
ago.
that was another thing is I got told to stop doing the dancing because Tommaso shit on it. And so many people were like, it looks stupid. And then I stopped getting pops.
Yeah.
And then Tarzan goes, I need you to start doing that stupid dance again because for some fucking reason the crowd loves it.
Because people like when you show ass. You know what I mean? That's what it is. They love to see. They want to be entertained. At the core of it, they want to be entertained. Whether it's by a freaking super athletic match or 8 minutes of strutting around the ring and getting blown up like I did. They want to be entertained, you know? You're entertaining my kids while I can sit here and drink my beer. Have at it.
And I think this, to bring it back to New England wrestling, as far as gimmicks versus wrestlers go, is like, think about how fast Anthony Green rose when he started pushing the retrosexual thing.
Mm-hmm.
He's pushing this thing. He's this retrosexual guy. He's doing vignettes at Chaotic. He had that weird little drug deal with, not drug deal, but it was like a tripping thing with Scotty Slitt. Like everyone was so entertained by everything that was going on. Everyone was like, this is fresh. This is new. It's a character. It's different. Like great, finally. And then, in no fault of his own, he had to drop the sexual thing because of where he's at right now.
Sure.
But now he's just blending in with the crowd again.
Yep.
And he's just wrestler A versus wrestler B.
Yeah, and that's it. And that's part of the problem with the characters. Like, how far could Bray Wyatt have gone with that, you know, with the Robert De Niro gimmick from that movie, right?
Yes.
Like, how far could that go? And with the goofy Mr. Rogers gimmick that he was doing with just the vignettes of the Funhouse. Yeah. I remember stopping it and telling my wife to come in and watch this thing. I go, this is so fucking fun. This is so amazing. But then I go, I remember a kid at work telling me, he's like, oh, I can't wait to see where this goes. I go, I don't want it to end. I want him never to wrestle. I just want to keep seeing these things because I know once he wrestles, it kills it. It kills the mystique a little bit, right? So I think that's the same thing as far as like the characters go and the gimmicks go. If you don't keep doing what you're doing or evolving it, at some point they're just going to go, like, I've seen this, you know? And I think that's kind of where AG's at. Like, people still pop for him, and the kid's fucking good, but where does that retro now go? Like, he stopped doing those fun vignettes and those, you know, those types of things. I think he has to kind of bring that back and just to keep the thing going, or he has to change.
Yeah, or evolve it or whatever.
Right.
But I want to talk about that too in New England is back in your time when you guys were wrestling, was promos more prevalent then as they are now? Because if you look on YouTube, there's a lot of like packages and stuff, but there's no like addressing the camera really and like cutting my promo or even like the old school Mean Gene Okerlund interview with someone cutting a promo. You see it on Ring of Honor and stuff, but in New England itself, it feels like everyone tries to stray away from promos. Was that a thing back then?
Well, I mean, you're asking the wrong guy here because Jeff's promotion was the oldest old school promotion in the late 90s. I mean, he had, you know, an Indian gimmick. He had a Pollock gimmick, you know. He was promos were never a big thing unless you were Jeff, you know, unless you were on top. And because that's how Jeff kind of ran shows, that the main event was everything. And you didn't do that much on the undercard. So
in all the shows I worked, I don't remember ever there being like sometimes it'd be an interview segment like, you know, in the middle of the show, but always just to shoot an angle. But guys, none of us were really that great at promos back then. You know what I mean? Like I remember, like I told the story. DJ Barron, we're up at Green Mountain, and DJ came up to fill in for somebody, and they're like. Dave's like, well, we have to do a promo for the TV. They said we have to do a promo for the TV. Gary did. And Dave's like, whatever you do, just don't ask me anything. He goes, I can't cut promo. I've never talked on a mic, nothing. So they go, and what do you think, Dave? And they put the mic on him, and he goes like this, we're going to win? It was like a question. That was his promo. All the boys were fucking dying, you know? But then he goes, we're going to win? Right? Yeah. Guys, and then the crowd goes, all right, you're going to win. And they start clapping, and they're like, yeah, all right. And he's like, okay. But that was like, it just wasn't a thing back then. It really wasn't because there wasn't to put to YouTube to sell tickets, right? They weren't doing, hey, watch this quick minute 30-second thing about the upcoming show because there was no platform for it. So you didn't want to cut promos to sell tickets to a show that was already happening because you're already on it. You know what I mean? You're in it.
So I guess the promo game really hasn't changed in any way, shape, or form in New England because, I mean, now we do have platforms to do it, and I'm not saying that it doesn't exist. It just feels like the only videos I really see who do them are Chaotic Wrestling. Mm-hmm. But like any other promotion, and I've addressed this with several guests on the show who have run their promotions, like, why don't you? You now have a platform for it. I feel like this is all about character building. This goes back to character building, and I just feel like people get away from it.
Yeah, like well, what you're talking about, it was such a shock to my system when I first started working for Steve Bradley, WFA, because never had the opportunity to cut promos. And I just remember going there, and Steve was, way ahead of his time, and he was doing the Titantron-esque things, and he was doing backstage vignettes and promos, all sorts of stuff. And it was a hard adjustment. I suddenly had to cut promos in this character of the rock and roll, glam band thing. And I remember the first time we had to do a squash match. This sounds insane to me, but the first time we did like a TV squash match, and we had never done that. We'd just done spot shows, which, I don't know why more people aren't doing that now, though. Like Chaotic does it, probably because they, stole it from WFA. But I don't know if enough
Shots
people
fired.
are doing that, which is, you have social media. You should be doing that like crazy to promote shows, promos and online YouTube channels, all that stuff.
And that's, I'm going to keep referring back to a guy who I feel like is undercredited with his knowledge of professional wrestling, which is a former guest of the podcast, Mark Sherman. And he had stated that promos are done now. They're just Twitter posts. Mm-hmm. And it's like everyone feels comfortable just typing out verbiage as opposed to saying it. And I think that's why we're growing a group of New England wrestlers who just are so used to not talking, which then in turn doesn't create a character, which in turn means it's just an MMA fighter to me.
Yeah, but if you want to get to the WWE one day, you're going to have to learn how to cut promos. I mean,
I agree with you.
They have a 3-hour show to fill every week.
Imagine you're a kid like, just for instance, like a DL Hurst, right? And every week, every Friday at 3 o'clock, you posted a video. Its first 4 months has no steam behind it all, but all of a sudden, you say something in one promo. 45 seconds, you know what I mean? Every Friday, 3 o'clock, or whatever the case is. It's 4 months in, you say something in that 45 seconds that catches on, and next thing you know, that thing goes viral. And next thing you know, you have 4,000 viewers every single week. Just think about what that can do for you. Like, why wouldn't you do it? Like, I personally just don't get it. I would, if I was working today and I had the opportunity to promote an upcoming show or an upcoming match, and I had free avenues to do it, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, whatever the dick pic app there, Snapchat or whatever, right? Like, whatever it is, just send. I'd put it across all platforms, hoping that something would catch on. What's the chances it's going to catch on? Probably nil. But if it does, it's like playing the Powerball, right? You can't play if you don't win.
Yeah, look how big YouTube celebrities are. I mean,
there's a 9-year-old kid who opens friggin' toys who's a millionaire. He opens toys. Yeah, he's 9.
It's I don't know. I here's what I'm going to reference Mark Sherman. He said that everyone nowadays is afraid to be different and afraid to be the clown. In this case, I feel like wrestling promotions don't want to feel old school because that's what a promo on a video feels like. And so that's not what everyone's doing. And so if I go outside the box and I do something different and everyone starts viewing my promotion as old school or not up with the times, then I'm not going to be cool, so I'm just going to follow in suit instead of try to be different.
Yeah. It's, there's a guy out there who works for Impact. I think his name is Ethan Page, who does a weekly vlog, right? Sometimes it's 25 minutes long. I don't think you need to do anything like that. Or Sammy Guevara or whatever, who does a weekly vlog again. You don't need to do anything that's that kind of length. Give it 1 minute, like something like cracking the nut with Charlie Cashew. A 1 minute thing a week. Now that I've said this, every chaotic student's going to have a video out every week. Yeah. But I think I think you're silly for not doing it. I think promos are a huge part. If you can't talk, you're probably not going to get a job.
Yeah, look, I know it's like 5-8 years ago now, maybe, but isn't that what got Zack Ryder over? I mean, not to a huge scale, but He acted like a goofball on YouTube, you know?
Actually, exactly. It was a pretty damn big scale.
Yeah.
He worked for WWE.
Well, yeah, and
the crowd would go crazy for him for some weird, odd reason.
They weren't using him on TV.
Yep.
He's like, well, I'm going to do something. So he created his own little...
For some reason, WWE decided to ignore him.
It's hard.
And not put,
you can't
work
argue with
his push.
something that works, though. You know, if it works, it works. And that was, for whatever reason, clicking with people that were entertained.
And this goes back to what I originally said is you're going to hear people who have an open mind that will go, I see your point. You're going to hear negatives that go, you know, we're going to sound negative if we say, we see no other point. But then you're going to hear wrestling advocates who fall suit with what's cool today. And they're going to go, nah, you're wrong. Like, that's not the deal. Like, you guys just don't want to evolve at the time.
Right.
So in New England wrestling, this is a big thing, and this is what I feel like has created a majority of our problems. How do you feel kayfabe has changed in New England wrestling from then to now?
I don't think it exists. Yeah. I think with I think now you see like guys will be working a show, and one will hurt the other, and then they post about it and say, I'm so sorry that this happened or whatever. You know, I think that the fans are so in tuned and everything's so available to them that I think the walls are down. You know, the only thing that's really keeping us between them and us is that thin curtain at the low, you know, at the GameStop. You know what I mean? There's like, everybody knows that wrestling is a work. Everybody knows that wrestling is fake. They just don't know how it works, you know? Like, I know magic isn't real. I just don't know how they do it. But I still want to be amazed by a trick. You know, I know you're not really making that fucking card disappear. I don't need to know how it's done because I'm entertained by it. But everybody knows that it's, you know, but why give them reason to say, point it out? And that's what I say.
That's the other thing, the argument I have is like, there's so many shows that you're on. I mean, we still do it at Chaotic, is they're like, don't stand here. The crowd's going to see you. Kayfabe. And you're like, okay, so kayfabe exists when I'm behind the curtain, but for some reason when I go out there and I act like I'm moving in slow motion and punching them, you're okay with me killing kayfabe. Right. You're also okay with me posting on Twitter, hey, bro, you're okay. You don't give me shit for that, but for some reason you don't want me to see him behind the curtain talking to my opponent. You know what I mean? It's like, it feels like a light switch. They're like, all right, kayfabe works here. All right, turn it off here. All right, turn it back on. All right, turn it off.
Yeah. So when you were working, Mark Vincent. So there was still kayfabe still existed then.
Yeah, especially because I was trained by Jeff, who had been in wrestling for a long time and preached kayfabe. But now there's a real thin barrier between the workers and the fans.
Paper thin.
Yeah. It's like, and I know I've heard you guys complain about it in the show, and my brother complains about this, how he would book a heel champion who would then be on Facebook best friends with all his fans, you know, and
selling T-shirts, selling merch, and
that's why I think part of the wrestling and how it's changed in New England wrestling is I think the days of a true heel, I think they're gone. Like MJF is the closest you have to the point, but I still think people are still cheering him because it's a cool thing to do. I think they're super entertained by him because he is super entertaining. But they still know, like, they're like this. I'm in on it. I know he's not really a jerk.
Yeah.
You know? But so I think that, like, Christian, who's part of that, you know, the heel faction there, what are they called?
The Killanova Inc.
Killanova Inc., right?
I think they called it the Culture now.
Yeah. That group, if done right, and I think they could be a heel group because you got the big heater and Bryce. You got the guy who's been around.
You have Triple-Licious.
And then you got the freaking kid who can do anything, right? And Christian. That's the perfect pairing. But Christian is so freaking good, and Bryce does the music, and he's super talented. And then you got Trips, who's just been around forever, so people know him. People cheer for him. They need to break out and do something. They need to kill somebody, I think, in the ring.
It's
maybe face rape somebody.
I really, the big thing, the reason I brought this kayfabe thing up is because I feel like that's honestly what killed professional wrestling and why everyone's so afraid to be a gimmick, because everyone has the mindset like, kayfabe's dead, brother. Like, you're not going to be able to sell anything to friends. I'm like, of course you're not, because you don't want to try and protect it.
Right.
Like, it's up to us to protect it. And the problem is everyone's trained like, keep kayfabe. And they're like, all right, now go out there and high five. The big thing is, how many times have you seen in a match two people destroy each other after a blood feud, and then right after they stare at each other, give each other a hug, do the whole hands up thing, like, we're just best friends, thanks for the you want wrestling to be one way, but then you also want it to be a Broadway show where we're going to play characters, and then when the curtain comes back up, we'll bow and take a bow together, and then it's like we want people to know it's a show, but we also want it to be treated like a sport, which goes back to my switch flipping analogy.
Who doesn't do that? Brock Lesnar.
Yes.
Brock Lesnar everyone thinks Brock Lesnar is Brock Lesnar. No one, he doesn't act differently. Brock Lesnar, the character, is Brock Lesnar, the person, in everyone's mind, of course. Yeah. Who knows what he's like outside of the ring, but
because because he doesn't fucking flaunt it.
Right.
He's not on Twitter. He's not on Facebook. He's not on Instagram going, went hunting today, shot a deer, and then holding up the antlers, smiling, with thumbs up. Yeah. Not him.
With Bray Wyatt, we shot this together.
Right.
He seems like a fucking pretentious, big star asshole fighter who can come and destroy you when he goes to WWE. When he goes to UFC, same thing.
Yes.
Do you see him flaunt anywhere else? No. So what do you believe? You believe he's that guy.
Yeah, because he doesn't let you believe in it. There's no other side to him.
I'll always refer back to Tommaso Ciampa. So Tommaso Ciampa, again, everyone always thought he was insane and blah, 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 blah. And everyone's like, he's a fucking maniac and this, that, and the other thing. And then I travel with him and I'm like, this dude is pretty fucking normal.
Yeah.
But it's because he's trying to go for that gimmick. He commits to it. So then he doesn't let anyone in on it. So then he's just like, everyone has nothing but that persona.
His recent heel run, even when he would post something on Instagram or Facebook or Twitter or whatever the case is, it was in that heel persona, was so fucking believable. I remember sending him messages going, this brings me back to my childhood, like when I thought Don Morocco was the biggest prick in the world. You know what I mean? Like you're making believers out of people. Like that's the type of thing that people say, well, I know wrestling's fake, but fucking Tommaso, he's really angry.
Exactly, and that's back to MJF as well.
Yeah,
I mean, the guy
it's
who's
far and few between.
He's
far and few between.
So committed to his gimmick everywhere that everyone thinks he's an asshole. You know what I mean? And so, because no one gets to chat with him every day, no one knows the difference.
Right.
And
you keep the mystique.
Because he's willing to protect.
Yeah.
And for some reason, we're willing to protect when we're like sitting in gorilla waiting to go outside. But then when we go out there, we're supposed to be kayfabe, but then we can also break kayfabe. And then after shows, you can, you know what I mean? Like, I can make a kid cry, but then I have to be told to go to apologize later.
Yes.
No, go make that kid cry, go home, and
Fuck
then
that kid.
Have that kid for the rest of his life remember I was an asshole to him.
We perpetuate, I think, as wrestlers, New England independent or otherwise, I think we perpetuate our own situations. MJF perpetuates that he's an asshole. Tommaso did the same thing when he was a heel. He was just a mean, miserable, black-hearted prick. Yeah. That's what he perpetuated. We perpetuate our own stories. And I think when we're out there saying, fuck you, shut up, and then on Facebook, hey, thanks, guys. That was super fun tonight. See you next month.
Well, we could probably examine this all day long, but don't we have fan questions we have to get to?
It's funny that you say that, Mark. I was just about to jump into it. This podcast is going to run long.
That's why
we try to keep it 2 hours, but this is running pretty long. So I'm going to jump right into it real quick. I want to thank the fans for going ahead and chiming into Truth, Justice, and the New England Pro Wrestling Way podcast. I'm going to go ahead and start rambling off these questions. We'll try to just answer them as quick as possible. So Tyler McDonald asks, compare coming I think he says coming up, like being the top guy. Compare coming up and being the top guy today versus back in the day, as far as the independents go. Like, was there a time back then that you could become like a top guy, and do you feel it's like harder now?
I think it's probably actually easier now. I think back then, if I was a top guy for Jeff, there's no way I'm going to be a top guy for Joe Eugenio or Silvano Souza down in Fall River area. I think because there were so fewer places to work, that it was harder because they had their guys, we had our guys. Now, like Beyond Wrestling, they don't have homegrown talent. Limitless doesn't have homegrown talent. Chaotic does. So you can be a top guy there, but now you can be a top guy at Limitless and Beyond and another group out of Rhode Island, whatever the case is. So it's easier that way.
Then there were probably more rivalries between promotions in the 90s in New England, and less so now. So you can become a top guy in New England now, and you could do it for all the promotions, which didn't really happen back then, right?
Yeah. No, yeah, just different. Yeah.
Brian Privatera, I'm sure you guys know who that is.
Colin Chaos, right?
Yes, that's how I knew him as.
That's the only time I met him. Yeah.
So he had asked, and I don't think he understood what the subject was, but I'll ask anyway. He said, if you could do it all over again, what were the top 3 things that you would have done differently?
I would have dedicated more time to the gym to get in shape, because I actually think that I could have done something more, than New England independent wrestling. I think that if I had any kind of self-confidence in myself, I would have been like, instead of being a tub of shit, I'm going to actually go to the gym, I'm going to dedicate, I'm going to diet, I'm going to do the right things, because there was guys doing it. I think that I could have had a better, longer career that was financially better as well. That's just one thing, but that's enough.
All right. Sorry, Brian, we're not going to be able to get all of that. So Stephen Page asked, is it easier or better to find reliable ring gear makers, or do they think with today's days of internet it was better back then because you had more of a connection to them, because at least a phone call was involved? Okay, so I'm gonna shrink this. Basically what he's asking is, was it hard to get gear makers back then?
There was 2 gear makers back then. There was K&H out of Ohio, and there was Adrian Street.
Yeah.
That was it. Adrian Street made spandex. K&H made 4-way stretch nylon for fat guys. Guess which one I ordered from?
And so everyone would go through those two?
Those were literally it. Unless you had a wife who later on, like my wife started making my own gear because we found a company online. It's called Spandex World that sold everything spandex, like every design, every color, everything. Now, guys are more resourceful and go, I'm not going to spend $60 on a set of trunks. I can just go buy the spandex for $13 and have my mom teach me how to sew, or watch a YouTube tutorial. Charlie Cashew makes gear. You know what I mean? Like there's guys everywhere that make their own gear now.
Yeah,
and
I think there's so many internet outlets now that you can find gear makers at.
Yeah. Colt Cabana makes his own gear.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it answered its own question. It's
absolutely
way easier back, now to get gear than it was back then, because you had 2 outlets. Leo Connors, the guy that you co-host.
Never heard of him.
You co-host the Dropkick Kitchen with.
Correct.
Leo Connors had asked, how much has vendors changed? Do you see more now or back when you first started? How do you feel about business adjacent people making money off the wrestling business?
So I back then there weren't vendors. You didn't have somebody come in and buy a table and sell his product, because why the fuck should he make money? That should be us making money, right?
Yeah.
So, but now it's super prevalent. I think, like, if you have spots to rent tables out and you can get $75 a table, if you can sell 4 tables, that's $300. That takes care of some of your promotion or some of your guys, and you didn't have to do anything except offer them a space. I'm not giving you a table. All I'm doing is, this is your spot right here. You put whatever you want there, and this is how much spot you have, right? And so you're selling space is what you're doing. I think it's way more prevalent now. It wasn't around back then.
All right, and the final question is from Eric Wilson again. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
A man with a perpetual problem with attendance. Sorry, it's a very inside joke.
Yes, inside joke. A man with a problem with attendance. Eric Wilson, I want to thank the fans again for chiming into the Truth, Justice, and New England Pro Wrestling Way podcast. Eric asked, who are some forgotten wrestlers from the past that wrestlers nowadays could benefit from watching? I'm talking hidden gems that maybe don't get the credit they deserve, whether it be on local, national, or global level.
That's a good question. In the past 2 years, I probably found this guy again for whatever reason, but Al Perez, you guys remember Al Perez?
No.
You don't. You probably remember Al Perez.
Yeah.
Al Perez was so freaking good. Just really, really good. I actually told the young kid, Timothy Thatcher, I think not Timothy Thatcher, whatever his name is, I don't know, it's from around here or whatever, but the kid's really good. I told him, I said, start watching his stuff, like when it's time to turn up the intensity and the heat, like when you're a heel, the guy he was so good. I think watching guys like, again, this is an older generation that I'm in. I never thought there was anybody better. I could watch Arn Anderson matches all day long. I loved fucking Arn Anderson, especially when he was like, or Bobby Eaton, like with Stan Lane or Dennis Condrey, those tag team matches. Just how fluid they were, how in and out they were, how quick they were. Same thing with like underrated, like the Killer Bees, like Brian Blair and Brunzell, those kind of guys. Don Morocco to me was one of the best heels I'd ever seen ever. Like he made me believe that SD Jones was going to beat him every single week. You know what I mean? Just he was such a good heel. So I think those are some guys on the local level. I think guys like Duke Dalton, who showed up at the wrestling, at Chaotic at the NEPWA a couple weeks ago to do the podcast, and I thought he was going to get back in the ring. I was like, these kids have no idea. Like, he was really, really good.
Yeah.
So he could, guys could benefit from guys like him. A guy like Joel Davis, they could benefit from. I don't understand. I don't understand. What are you laughing at? You could benefit from Joel Davis.
Yeah, if you want to laugh.
Yeah.
All right, so
that's that.
I hope that answers your question, Eric Wilson. Again, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for chiming in on Truth, Justice, and the New England Pro Wrestling Way.
And I guess we're done for the week.
No, we are not done, sir. We do have to jump into the
Fantastic Four.
We do have to jump into the segment that we have on every show, sir, and that is the Fantastic Four. What are you doing? Marcus, we're supposed to be
I thought you guys
doing
were
this together.
No, I already...
You're a noise boy. Make some noise,
I already told him I'm not doing this nerd thing where we both chime in at the same time.
That's rude.
It's your show.
That's
Enjoy
rude.
the segment.
All right. So anyway, it's Fantastic Four, ladies and gentlemen. It's the same 4 questions that we ask all of our guests. Typically what happens is I do one, Tarzan does the other, so on and so forth. We'll see if we can keep the format. Otherwise, you know how your brother is. If we get off the format, he's probably going to quit this podcast for life. So the first
at least till next week.
The first question, ladies and gentlemen, is, Sonny, with your entire dealings in professional wrestling, what would you say that you are most proud of?
The thing I'm most proud of is actually just more recently, like is realizing through guys like Brian and Brian Fury and Stiff Mike at APW and those kind of things that my time in the business wasn't lost. I actually have something to give, and they appreciate it. So I appreciate it, and it makes me feel good that like I didn't just spend time in the business and I've forgotten about. So that's it.
I actually think I do know a question too, which is, yes, in your entire dealings in professional wrestling, what is your biggest regret?
Yeah.
Nailed it.
Not making a better go at it. Like I always thought I had the opportunity to go do jobs when they were, in Lowell and things like that. Got the invites. I was backstage. I would be the guy that hides though. Like I didn't want to go do a job because in my head I was such an egomaniac. I think I'm like, I don't want to be the guy that they see get beat up on Saturday morning TV and then come pay to see me and I'm the champ on Saturday night. You know what I mean? Like I couldn't differentiate the two. Looking back on it, I should have done those kind of things. I should have spent more time in the gym. I should have just taken the payday to do those jobs, eat the catering, and have fun, right? But I thought the two were different, and I was like, I don't want to be that guy. Like, oh, I saw you on Monday night. Like, I remember I felt so bad. Maverick could have cared less, but when Maverick went and did the job for WCW Monday night, and he got beat up by Jacqueline, he took an ass kicking. He took an amazing ass kicking, but then he comes back the following Saturday night in Hudson, and they're like chanting jobber at him and stuff, and I'm like, I was like, they have no idea, like, what to get to that spot to be able to do, like, it's not like it's an honor, but it's not anybody can just do that, you know what I mean? And he took a hell of a beating. I just never wanted to be that guy. Looking back on it, I should have been more dedicated, should have done those kind of things, should have stuck my face out there, because who knows what would have ever happened,
All right, so the third question, sir, is, with your entire dealings in professional wrestling, who would you say you hate or strongly dislike, and will you name them?
Yes, I strongly dislike Joel Davis. Back in the day, when Joel was on the show, he had a reputation of being sloppy and hurting guys. And I honestly, this is my God's honest truth, I think it's because he couldn't see. He used to wear glasses. Now he wears contacts. But do you remember, were you on shows with Joel Davis?
No, I know he is, of course.
Okay. He used to hurt guys. I remember in the straw that he worked with my buddy Rob Veth, who was working as Johnny Royal, and hurt Johnny Royal. He drop kicked him in the face. Yes, you're going to get hit. You're going to, you know what I mean? But you do everything you can to protect the guy you're in there with. He just came across as sloppy and haphazard, and I didn't like it, and I never did. Then I ran into him I'm going to say about a year ago at the New England Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame, and he proceeded to tell me how Jeff Costa went to him personally and asked Joel to help me break into the business. At this time, I had already been with Jeff for 2 fucking years. Joel was the outsider. So Joel's telling me this is how it went down. And he put his arm around me as he's buying me a beer. And I remember I helped you break into the business as a personal favor to Jeff Costa. And I brought you along, kid. And I'm like, that's not the way it happened, Joel, but whatever you need to think. Thanks for the beer. And I kind of,
pie-faced him
away. I'm like, all right, get away from me. And then he was drinking, so I'm guessing the alcohol was to blame for this. Then he was just really mouthing off and just being super loud. Rich Palladino chewed him out because people are getting inducted, and it is a big deal. It's an honor to be inducted and or to just be even recognized. And he was being super loud out in the hallway, being Joel Davis. So Rich had chewed him out, fucking told him to quiet the fuck down, and he told my partner Leo, I'll fucking body slam you. And Leo looked at him and goes, what the fuck makes you think I'm going to let you? Now, Leo's a scrappy kid from Lowell who just as soon as punch you in the face than talk to you if he doesn't like you. So I don't think Joel knew who he was mouthing off to. And Joel was just whatever. And I thought that was going to be the last dealings I had with Joel until recently. He challenged me and Leo to an sanctioned MMA pro fight, kickboxing, MMA, glass Taipei death match thing. I don't know what it is. 8 months later, I'm like, what? I sent it to my wife. I sent the video clip to my wife. She goes, well, did you talk shit about him? I go, yeah, to his face in July. That was it. So I strongly dislike Joel Davis. Everybody else I love, though.
I got to be on a show with Joel Davis. And
you were lucky.
I got the 411 on him real quick. And that's all I could say.
I wish him nothing but the best and happy life. Happy, you know what I mean? God bless you or whatever. But if I never saw Joel Davis again, I'd be okay.
Yeah. And the fourth question is, what does the future in wrestling or life hold for Sonny Goodspeed?
Well, I'm a mark for the belts, so I'm going after all the belts in every division. I'm going to be the lightweight, heavyweight tag team champion, and whatever it takes. No, I really just want to focus on. I'm starting a new job this week, and I really want to focus on that, but also focus on helping out at the New England Pro Wrestling Academy school, because they have a good crop of students coming in right now that I'm kind of grown fond of, and I think they're fun, and I think it's fun to train. I get to train alongside Julian and Brian and Chase and Johnny Vegas, and I just think it's a good group of guys, and these kids are lucky to have that wealth of knowledge to be there, with them, and so help there however I can, and just see where that goes. If maybe I can become part owner.
Well, good luck getting your hands on that.
Yeah.
So. Sonny, I want to thank you again for being on the podcast. I know that you're on the WPAM, but I'm glad you were able to be my guest today, or our guest, excuse me. I feel like we could have literally spent 3-4 hours talking about New England wrestling, your career. I mean, the differences between then and now. Just your final thoughts on the then and now. I mean, honestly, would you prefer wrestling to be still back then, or are you okay with it being now?
I think if wrestling stayed the way it was, it would have gone extinct. I think it would have gone the way of the dinosaurs. I think evolution is natural, and I think I would have been a bigger fan if it went slower. I think, not that I'm not a fan today, but if it just looking back, I think if it would have gone slower and evolved to where it is, I'd be okay. It took me a long time to adjust, like 5 years of not seeing anything, but then come to the realization that like, no, I'm just a dick. I need to give in. So here I am.
Mark?
No, I mean, final thoughts. I mean, wrestling changes. It was different before, and it's always going to exist in some form or another. So
I think I'll admit to, I can finally admit I'm just the old guy that doesn't want to see it evolve. Mm-hmm. And I like the 90s. I like the 80s. I like wrestling itself, like the matches. Everyone has great psychology matches now. I think I want my characters back. And I just don't want to see it evolve.
Yeah, it's what you grew up in, yeah. And, wrestling, like you said, Mark, wrestling's always going to be around. We can either be with it or not. That's our choices. We're not going to stop it, so.
Well, Sonny, again, I want to thank you so much for being on the show and answering these questions. And like I said, we can drag this on all day, but unfortunately, we got to wrap up the time. Mark Vincent, I want to thank you so much for filling in for your brother who's wasting his time at Disney. I'm not a big Disney fan, guys. So it's free plug time. Sonny Goodspeed, where can we find you on the interwebs?
My picture may be on Toyota Nashua's website because I start there on Monday.
Okay.
That'll be where I'm at on the interwebs. And that's it.
No Facebook, Instagram?
No Facebook, no nothing.
All right.
Which is the worst. But it is what it is.
All right. Mark Vincent, where can we find you on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, anything? Free plug time.
Nowhere, but thanks for having me here, buddy.
All right. Well,
do you guys validate parking?
We do not. Sorry. So you can find Mark Vincent at any of your local poker rooms, but also you can find Truth, Justice, and the New England Pro Wrestling Way on Facebook. We are a like page. Please stop by Truth, Justice, and the New England Pro Wrestling Way. Give us a like. You can also follow us on Twitter at Pro Wrestling Way. And as always, you can download this podcast on any major podcasting app that you see fit. Please like, subscribe, give us a star rating, leave any feedback that we can use to help make this the best listening experience for you. As far as this goes, I think we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. Thank you so much for joining us for episode 18. And tune in 2 weeks when we release episode 19 here on Truth,
Justice,
and the New England Pro Wrestling Way. You really got to get on board if you're going to fill in.
You always boy my ass.